So hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is the fourth part of the story, what if Naruto and Sasuke gained memories of their past. If you guys enjoy this what if and want more, comment down below to let me know. The comments on videos really help me out a lot. They motivate me to upload more frequently, so please do comment down below. Before I start, please do support for more awesome contents and leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And share this video with your friends and also check out the descriptions and check out the playlists. With that out of the way, let's start. It was on the urging of Ino that Sarutobi Asuma wandered into Training Ground 4, followed by his genin, which Team 13 had claimed for themselves. Considering how close the place was to the Senju compound, it made sense that Kakashi had chosen this place or at least, would have made sense. However, Naruto didn't live in the Senju compound, so it was pointless. Asuma was left wondering why Kakashi had chosen the place. Not that it mattered much. Training Ground 4 was where Team 13 could always be found and today was no different. The team was there, like always, well 3 of them. Yamato was missing, but Asuma was sure it was because they had their hands full with straightening out the village. It was lucky that in the end, Orochimaru's plan to use the 3 Hokage had failed. And now, even if temporarily the 3 legendary shinobi were in the village to whip it into shape. It eased Asuma's mind somewhat. The village without Hokage was dangerous, politically. Of course, they would need an actual god aim soon, but with the 3 dead legends back formed behind the gates of death could also be a solution. Nidaime-sama and Yondaime-sama were bussing themselves with setting the village straight, although he hadn't seen the Shodai anywhere. He wondered where the true Kami no Shinobi had gone off to. Another part of him was curious why the Yondaime wasn't with Naruto. Ah, hello Asuma. Asuma nodded. Kakashi. Sasuke Ino called, her voice unnaturally shrill, immediately jumping on the Uchiha. The Uchiha dodged Ino expertly and stood to his full height. As he stood, the first thing that flashed into Asuma's mind when he saw the Uchiha was regal. Do not know that again, Ino-san. You try something like that again, I will be forced to use force to make sure you keep a respectable distance. Ino drew up short at that and Asuma saw her eyes widen. However, before she could say something, they were disturbed by a loud crack. Sasuke immediately changed positions, standing next to Kakashi. Then, Naruto burst forth from the trees, followed by the Shodame. Mokuten. Makisatsu Shibari no Jutsu wood release. Smothering binding technique, the Shodame called as his hands transformed into wood, shooting towards Naruto. Naruto jumped upwards and flared his chakra. Mokuten. Senahanaha wood release. 1,000 flower blades. The countless tiny orange flowers that formed around Naruto all shot towards the Hokage. The man avoided by using Doton to hide under the ground. Naruto landed on the ground with a sigh, but Asuma could see he was not calm. Hashirama burst from the earth and Naruto leapt away doing a set of seals. Mokuten. Ibara no rare wood release. Hail of thorns. The Shodame stopped and his chakra flared in response. Mokuten. Makijimiki wood release. Wood locking wall. The wall of wood rose before the man, arching slightly over him to stop the great thorns. Even before the man could step away from the safety of his creation, Naruto appeared next to him with a shunshin and swung. The Hokage dodged the punch which, Asuma decided might have been the sensible idea. The chakra-enhanced blow cracked the wood, after all. The kid certainly knows how to pack a punch. The Hokage smiled and retaliated with a series of fast strikes, and from what Asuma knew, he was aiming his open-palmed attacks at medically important points. Naruto dodged 2 of the rapid attacks, but the third one hit him and he staggered back with a grunt and then in his attempt to backtrack, he lost his balance, falling on his back. The Shodame stopped above the blonde, both of his hands in an open-palmed position, similar to how Hika held them. The blonde groaned. Damn you, Oji-san. That's a win for ya. The Shodame chuckled and helped up the blonde. But you're fast, Naruto-kun. Creative and skilled when using your abilities as well as your surroundings. Considering that your body is still developing, all your skills are top-notch. The blonde dipped his head modestly. Arigato. I was hoping you'd teach me some extra chakra control and medical jutsu. As the 2 walked towards them, Asuma watched. He'd heard that Naruto was the Shodai's great-grandnephew, but it was just a fact on paper. Something he knew and accepted as part of life. Now that the man was here, even if for a bit obviously training the blonde, it was different. Gladly. As the 2 combatants' gazes shifted, Asuma bowed, followed by his students. Shodame-sama. The man nodded with a smile. Good day. My turn. Sasuke spoke suddenly, calmness personified. That is, if you don't mind. The Hokage grinned. The grin vaguely reminded Asuma of Naruto himself. Not at all. I heard from Tobi and Minato that you have some special fire. I would like to see it if you don't mind, Sasuke. The Uchiha grinned. Those flames were made to counter Mokuton, with the least possible chakra consumption from the user, so careful what you wish for, Hokage-sama. Asuma gaped and his cigarette fell. That was a warning. Ajinin was warning a Hokage. And he didn't sound arrogant or overconfident at all. Well, all the more reason for me to see them. The Hokage took his stain. Asuma saw as Sasuke's eyes bled into the sharingan, and then the uchiha took that unfamiliar stance he had been using all through the Chunin exams. And then, hell broke loose. Sasuke cursed as the Shadai's blow sent him flying. If there was something which he had learned over time, it was that no senju should be engaged in taijutsu, useless the individual wanted to collect several broken bones. His brother had learned chakra-enhanced strength slower than he had in the past, but in the end, said skill had become the base of his personal style. Now it seemed, it was a common occurrence for senju, or occasionally Uzumaki, to learn it after they mastered chakra control. The Shadai was no different. And gods be good, the man surely hit just as hard as Asura had. His back hit a tree, and every last wisp of oxygen left his system. Someone shrieked in the distance, but he could care less. He just wanted to breathe properly again. After a few hard moments, it was easier, but his back still ached. "Oh, Gomen Sasuke," the Shadai said, as the man stopped above him. "It seems I had miscalculated very badly, let me." "You did not miscalculate," Sasuke murmured. He didn't even protest, as green medical chakra covered the man's hand. "I was slow. Since I know how you fight like Naruto, I usually use chakra to reinforce my body just before the blow connects. As it is, I am not as fast as I had once been. That's why both of us need training. And we'll help the most we can," the Shadai assured him. "We will not let the world be destroyed. Short as it may be, this is our chance to aid you and we will." Once the medical chakra faded, Hashirama helped him stand and Sasuke didn't even protest. "And plus Ama. Are you?" Sasuke huffed, looking at the blonde who was approaching with Kakashi and Team 10 in tow. "Relax Otanto, it's just a notch worse than your own punches. Besides, he's healed the worst of it. But I need a break." He sighed. "I don't have your inhuman stamina and reserves. The difference is not that bad between the two of you," the Shadai said. Sasuke rolled his eyes. "You're trying to convince the wrong person. I know that the stronger body and denser chakra he has gives him enough energy to run say 5 laps, if with all I have, I ran 4. Considering his condition and the fact that his mother had shared said condition, that gives him stamina to run 2 more figurative laps." The Shadai scratched the back of his neck. "Gomen. I seem to have forgotten you're much more aware than others." Sasuke almost rolled his eyes at the veiled about the reincarnation. "No matter. So, mind teaching me some of the medical arts?" his brother asked, his violet eyes shining with excitement. "Of course not, Naruto-kun. Come on." Sasuke was just about done with his break when he felt his sensory tingle. As he looked up he saw the Nidai and Naruto's father. He nodded towards them in greeting. The blonde raised an eyebrow. "Relaxing already?" Sasuke shrugged. "I don't have that inhuman stamina that Uzumaki and Senju possess. My chakra is different. Besides, there's as much value in training as in resting." "Well said." The Nidaime nodded sagely. "Where is Hashirama?" "He's off teaching Otanto medical jutsu as a break." "Naruto? As a medic?" Minato murmured. "Odd to think about it, even if I know what I know now." Sasuke hummed. "It comes in handy." "I would think so." Sasuke studied the 2 senju for a moment and something popped into his mind. "Would you two mind teaching me some Kenjutsu? I know the absolute daily basics, but not more. Which is a bit bothersome, considering my brother's half Uzumaki. I'd never be able to beat him when it comes to that field. The Shinju knows he's the most creative person on the planet, but it would be Nisanato die from seals if he's not there to pull me out of a tight spot." Grandson and grandfather shared a look before the Nidaime's dark red eyes settled on him. "To start off, how much do you already know?" "Well." Omniscent, Naruto called as they approached. He noticed Kakashi speaking with Asuma while the Saratobi students were working on chakra control and some theory if the scrolls in front of them were any indication. He was walking calmly next to the Shadai, completely spent. Who knew medical training could be so tiresome? Sasuke was sitting on the grass, flanked by his father and great-grandfather. Judging from the scrolls and brushes all around them, the 2 former Kage were teaching his brother seals odd. He would have never thought Sasuke would learn more than the absolute necessary. Everyone froze in what they were doing, looking at him, Team 10 and Kakashi included. The 3 other members of his family all looked up from the scrolls, Sasuke's hand freezing mid-stroke. "N plus Ama. Are you is that a sealing brush in your hand?" Sasuke shrugged. "Got to learn something more of it than the basics." This seemed the good time for it. It needed a break from physical training, but that does not mean it can't pay attention to detail. Besides, it would have been foolish of me to pass up the opportunity to learn it when I have the two best macers of said art right here. No. Naruto hummed. Yeah. Of course. Hope you're having fun. He grinned. Sasuke scowled back. Oh, wipe that look off your face, Otanto. You know this sort of thing was always hard for me. Well, at least something. Bekuus, you were always the proper perfect one. He grunted back. I just had enough. Boys. His father called, tone lightly reprimanding. No need for that. What is it you wanted, Naru-kun? Naruto hummed. Well, you see, Otam-san. Naruto. His father cut him off again, a rather sulky look on his face. Well, sulky if you ask Naruto. The younger blonde was sure that his father would deny ever making such a childish face. Naruto blinked, looking at his father in confusion. What? Kakashi snickered off to the side. He hates formality, Naruto. Don't you, Hokage-sama? His father looked at his former student and rolled his eyes. Oh quite no, Kakashi. It may technically be dead, but I can still hand your ass to you in a spar. A Beto Sharingan in use or not. Naruto glanced to the side and saw Kakashi's lone eye widened a bit before he threw up his hands in surrender and took a few steps back. Gomen, sensei. He said, his eye crinkling into an upside-down U, with the most innocent look on his features possible with so much of his face covered. Naruto heard Sasuke mutter a coward from where his brother sat next to the Nidaime. Did you say something, Sasuke? His father asked. Naruto threw a worried look at his brother. Sasuke, ever compassed as he was, matched the blue eyes. Nothing, Minato-sama. He answered simply. Naruto saw his father twitch. Then he turned away from Sasuke with a huff. Alright son. What is it you were trying to say? Naruto took a deep breath. Well, you see, Otam-san. His father's eyes narrowed and a wave of killing intent spread through the area. Naruto. Sasuke. Kakashi called. Both of them looked up. Hi, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto didn't ask questions. He did as Kakashi told him to, Sasuke hot on his heels. Sadly for them, Minato was one of the two people who were called the fastest shinobi while they were alive. Naruto and Sasuke had the weirdest family she'd ever seen, Ino decided. She'd been observing the boys for a while now, and since the three dead Hokage were back, she saw a completely new side of her two former classmates. No, their family wasn't odd because they were dead. It was something else. Like how the two of them, not related by blood, treated and loved each other like siblings. Hell, she had twin cousins on her father's side, both of them boys, and they were not even quarter as good at being siblings as Sasuke and Naruto. They were always together, helping and supporting the other, no matter what. Their love for each other, as well as their friendship, was clear to see for anyone who stopped just for a moment. Bright, sunny Naruto and quiet antisocial Sasuke, they made the oddest pair. A pair who worked flawlessly together. They teased each other, hugged each other, laughed and cried with each other. They never argued, like others in a family. Sure, there were times when they didn't agree, but after a short scowling match, they would always discuss it sensibly, like grown-ups. It was kind of strange how mature they were. Still, despite it all, they were formal with one another to such a level that Stangers would think it abnormal. Actually, it wasn't normal, but it still fit with their personalities in an odd way. She also noticed how formal they were with the three Hokage. At first, she thought it was because the three were Hokage, but then she had to reconsider. One morning she caught them well, Naruto, Sasuke and Yondaime-sama eating at Ichiraku ramen. Minato-sama, Sasuke called. She was close, but she tried being sneaky. It would be a pain to explain why she was listening in on a private conversation. Sasuke-kun, for the 100th time. Kushina was your godmother. You're practically my family, Senju and Uchiha blood aside. Or because of it, whatever. You understand what I mean, right? She heard Sasuke snort. Of course. Well, point is, no need to be formal. She heard Yondaime-sama say. Her eyes were wide. She'd asked her father about Naruto's mother. Both of her parents spoke highly of the Princess of Yuzu. A Harrison clan head in her own right, one of the deadliest kunoichi of Konoha. S-ranked, just like her husband. Naruto's family was full of deadly people. Those she knew of were all cage-level shinobi. That deadly kunoichi was Sasuke's godmother. Habit. Sasuke muttered. You know, when eyes like my father's follow you everywhere, you learn to be proper. It reflects on the clan. And it was different then. I see. Ino's eyes were wide. She thought Sasuke didn't like speaking about his parents. So why was he mentioning his father now? And his father had told her that some clans were stricter with traditions, of course. But she thought the Hyuga were the only ones like that, so strict, in Konoha. Sasuke-kun's family had been like that too. So strict and cold. No wonder he was the way he was. No wonder he was so close to Naruto. Maybe it was Naruto who showed him that he could let go of those traditions while still remembering his family. Poor Sasuke-kun. Hope Naruto will make sure he's okay in the future, too. She thought. Is that why Naruto's like that too? The Yondaime asked. So formal. Sasuke hummed. Partially. It reflects on the people he gets associated with. But, it's more respect from him. Actual respect. And you know, from me too. Old habits are hard to kill, but… Ino blinked. She thought Naruto had lived alone. Had he been taken in by the Uchihas for a short while before they all died? Naruto had certainly made an effort during the academy to spend time with Sasuke, even if Sasuke had seemed unsure at first. However, it hadn't escaped her that the boys had become much closer after the massacre. You would try to hold those habits back if you thought differently of the people you're speaking to. The Yondaime said. Yes. I still remember that one time there was this kid who'd picked on Obito. Ino shook her head and slipped away. Naruto and Sasuke were the odd ones she would never understand. They loved each other like siblings, yet were formal archaic aristocratic. If she didn't know any better, she would have said their minds had made a stop at the warring clans era or something before they were born. You know, you're the oddest family ever. Kurama commented as Naruto was sprawled on the ground, trying to catch his breath from training. The odds knew his great-grandfather was a slave driver. A sort that probably hadn't been since, in Konoha. He was completely spent, his limbs felt like rocks, which was something, considering all his usual energy and physical endurance. Why would you say that? Well, Tenzo, Kakashi, 3 dead Hokage, who are temporary here to train you, just plain weird. Even for me. Naruto snorted. Oh, quiet now, Kurama. Besides, you're also part of this weird family, so don't leave it from the list either. Are you ready for another spar, Naruto? Naruto groaned as he sat up to face his father. Gods damn him, his father was fast and precise. It was like fighting Indra all over again, save for perhaps his father being even faster and not having a sharingan to pull nasty tricks with. You're a slave driver, just like Tobirama Oji-san. His father rolled his eyes. Well, excuse me Naruto, but it's not me who has a chakra goddess for grandmother, who by the way, wants to take over the world. His father snarked. Naruto growled. You know, sometimes I regret we ever told you all of that. Even before his father had a chance to respond, he leapt forwards, wooden staves forming in his hand, ready to deliver deadly blows. Senju Hashirama was an odd man, Sasuke decided. Even more odd than his brother, which was a feat considering Asura's nature and his quirks. But despite his odd nature, the man was a very good sparring partner and teacher, and somewhere along the way the more time he spent around the 3 resurrected Senju, the more he felt like he had a family again. After the initial shock of their revelations passed, the 3 Hokage had decided to stick around a bit longer to help deal with the mess inside the village, while helping them train. Sasuke would have thought that Hashirama would break down when they revealed that one of the mad Uchihas, who wanted to rule the world with the help of their non-human grandmother, was Madara. Madara had, after all, been the Shodai's friend. The man hadn't been happy of what had become of his former friend, but it had the opposite result. Hours after that heavy conversation, the Mokuton user sought him out and told him that the 3 of them had decided to stay a bit to help him and Naruto train. Between the mad trainings supervised by the 3 Hokage and their senseis, Sasuke could not focus on anything else, but then he got to spend some time with the Yondaime, who, by now was like an uncle father. Even the Nidai had eased up and it was nice. It was like he had his family back, together as a whole. Yamato and Kakashi were the slightly unhinged, lazy and completely unnecessarily overprotective cousins. The Yondaime had become a sort of father to him, too. There was Naruto, of course, his energetic torrible magnet baby brother. The Shodai was the overly cheerful, idiotic uncle with random bouts of wisdom, which Sasuke thought rivaled his father from his first life. The Nidai was the slightly detached, serious uncle, who was a good listener and had an unexpected penchant for pranking. No, that paint incident, which involved the Nidai, his brother and his freshly washed clothes, will never be spoken of again. Anyone who so much as mentioned the words Nidaime and paint in the same sentence near him, he would burn with amaterasu without an ounce of remorse. So yes. Life was nice, even if it only lasted for a bit. They were an odd family, misfits and bloodied warriors, broken by the cruelty of war, weighted by mistakes, but they understood each other. They had forgiven past grievances and were working toward something better. For the first time in ages, Sasuke thought the people that surrounded him reminded him of the warm comfort which the Otatsuki had been while him and Asura were growing up. Going back to his old house after having abandoned it so long ago was strange. But for some reason, the 3 Kage wanted to see it. So Sasuke didn't protest too much. He had little attachment to the place by now, and even if he happened to have a nightmare tonight, his brother would not say a word. Although, he honestly hoped he wouldn't have nightmares. After the wave incident, he had finally gotten rid of the last of the shadows that haunted him. He didn't need them coming back. As they entered the house, he waved at the 3 men. Feel free to have a look around. The little I had needed from his has long since been moved to the Namikaze house. Thank you Sasuke. The yondaime said quietly as the three senju walked deeper into the building. The hand touched his shoulder and he looked at Naruto, who was looking at him with worry. Are you alright, N+ama? Or should we wait outside? Sasuke took a deep breath, tempering down the dark bloody memories. A part of him detested that night, another part was grateful that Itachi had caught him in the genjutsu. He wondered if the bloody cycle of war between Senju and Uchiha would have been broken if him and Naruto didn't remember. Somehow, he doubted it and that would have inevitably doomed the world to destruction and slavery. No, Amanto. I'm fine. In fact, I went to check around too. Naruto arched an eyebrow. What are you hoping to find? Sasuke shook his head. I don't know. Just let's look around. He had expected many things, really he would have expected to find anything, but here he sat, in the middle of the Spartan room, more neat and Spartan than the rest of the house, that is. Here he sat, on the cold floor of the room, which had once belonged to Itachi, with a part of the floor missing, a small leather-bound book in his lap, open at the last 2 pages, that still had an entry. It was Itachi's journal. A journal he had never known even existed. One, which would not have been found if Naruto wasn't so hopelessly clumsy to kiss the floor just because that floorboard had been loose. And the last 2 pages, splattered with dried blood, made his own blood freeze in shock, while it also sent howling rage through him. Itachi's usually neat perfect letters were unsteady and hurried. Danzo wants me to kill the clan so Sasuke can live, but Danzo killed Shisui. I can trust him, but I can't risk Sasuke's safety either. And the masked man, oh, Kami, forgive me for the coming nights. This is as much for Konoha as much it's for Sasuke. Itachi had been forced into killing the clan. Itachi hadn't fallen to the curse. No, quite the opposite. Itachi. Naruto gripped his arm in reassurance, the dense warm chakra wrapping him in a protective blanket as if his brother hoped to ward off his rage and grief. He wanted to cry and howl and burn something, but he just squeezed his eyes shut and clung to Naruto's comforting presence. He had lost it once and it had led to ages-long bloody war. He will not lose it again. Sasuke. Naruto. The careful call of the yondaime jolted him from his thoughts. Sasuke needed a moment to gather himself and close the journal. Then, he stood up, clinging to Naruto for support, because if Naruto left him now, no. Don't think about that. He's not going anywhere. He looked at the older blonde. What is it? He asked, doing his best to remain composed. Minato looked at him sorrowfully as he made a gesture towards the sitting room. May we have a word? It's important. He nodded and walked towards the sitting room, the Hokage following behind him. Naruto's grip didn't falter for a second, his chakra a constant presence, filling his senses. For once, Sasuke was grateful the overwhelming presence of his friend's brother's chakra was the only thing that kept him grounded at the moment. The writing still floated menacingly in front of his mind. Wants me to kill the clan so Sasuke can live. He sat down, Naruto next to him. Minato walked to sit opposite them. The Shodaime sat in the middle, flanked by his brother and grandnephew. He held a small stack of papers. Sasuke, what we have to say will be hard, the Mokuton user started softly. We found these, I have a feeling it might have been left there intentionally for you to find someday. He slid the papers over. Sasuke took the sheets and read them. His eyes went wide. He tore at the page, wanting to see. This had to be some joke. His clan had wanted to take over the village and cause a civil war. Another page tossed to the side. The document went into more detail about how the clan would have taken over, using Thikikdi Jinchuriki to secure their power. Sasuke tossed the pile down and wrenched himself out of his brother's grip, bolting for the bathroom. He was sick. His clan would have ruined the village that had been built using his siblings, just like Madara and the nameless masked moron. He had honestly hoped that only Madara and the masked bastard were so sick to attempt utter and complete domination, but no. All his kin had been like that. By the time Naruto arrived, he was merely dry, having his head still spinning. Carefully, Naruto's arms wrapped around him and he felt the soothing warmth of medical chakra seep into his body. N+ama. The blonde whispered. What have we done? He choked out. We doomed the world, Atanto. I doomed my kin to fall, for they carried and nurtured the hate that I had once felt for you and Atam-sama. Now those lunatics are out there somewhere, planning to rule the world with the power of her siblings. We'll stop them. We know what Naruto do now and we'll do better this time around. Sasuke salloed and his mind flashed back to Itachi. Itachi, whom he hated and pitied in equal measure for falling to the curse, but he hadn't fallen. They ordered him to kill the clan. He chose me over the clan. That realization was heavier than most of the things he carried with him since his past life. Naruto gently tugged at his sleeve and led him back into the sitting room where the other senju were waiting. They ordered him to do it. He murmured, numb yet angry at the same time. Who ordered what? The Shodai asked. Itachi was ordered to kill them to prevent the mess, which you found outlined on the documents. He clarified. A man named Danzo killed my cousin, Shisui. He had the mangyeko. Then he blackmailed Itachi. Kill the clan or Danzo would have killed me, I presume. Itachi wrote that he does what he did so I can live. An hour later 4 Senju and an Uchiha were on the warpath, striding towards the council chambers, chakra and killing intent radiating from all of them to such extent that the civilians whom they passed fell to their knees. When they reached their destination, Naruto released a blast off wind chakra which opened the doors so forcefully that the heavy Mokuton created wood almost came off its hinges. As they strode in, the council looked up. Okage-sama? One of the civilians asked. Civilians out. Minato snarled. This is purely clan business. And close the doors behind yourselves. Feeling the anger and bloodlust radiating from the group, all the present civilians quickly scattered, closing the doors. What is the meaning of this, Okage-sama? Aburam Shibi asked. 5 deadly stares settled on a certain bandaged warhawk. Shimura Danzo, you are charged with treason and the orchestrating of genocide. Minato said coldly. Danzo's visible eye settled on the older blonde. I have no idea on what grounds are you accusing me. On the grounds of a journal entry, written and dated by Uchiha Itachi. Sasuke hissed. You blackmailed him. Kill the clan or you will hurt me. Itachi Chasimi over the clan. The clan may have betrayed the village, but you killed my cousin for his eye and you blackmailed Itachi. And what is that? Tobirama asked coldly. Even before anyone could wonder why the silver-haired Kage asked that, a whip of water materialized, dragging the man from his seat and cutting the bandage covering his arm. Under the bandages, they found countless sharingan eyes peering out at the world. Sasuke wasn't even surprised when suddenly, the room was full of powerful killing intent as Kurama's chakra covered Naruto in seconds. The clan head seemed to have problem withstanding his big brother's chakra presence, but it was no surprise. The Shadame immediately formed a snake sign. Hold your chakra Senju. Kurama snarled. I have no business with your village. He also noticed Jiraiya moving to a more visible spot, but as Kurama spoke, he stopped. Sasuke gave a look to the Shadame, and the man stopped, eyeing the Kurama-controlled Naruto warily. Every single person's eyes in the room went wide as they heard those words. However, the fox snarled, his eyes settling on Danzo. I have business with you, detestably bag. He darted closer and Danzo froze. You know, I never liked the Uchiha's too arrogant, that lot. And I come to detest them after Madara thought I was his personal pet, dancing how he pulled the strings he growled, and let's not mention the fucker who'd wretched me from Kushina. But there's one, Justin Sharingan wielder on this sorry planet that absolutely did not deserve my creator's sacrifice, whom I do not hate. And you just happened to treason that one, the one I care about. Even more eyes went wide, mostly among the clan heads, at those words. You treasoned my Otanto. Kurama snarled again, his chakra lashing out, and Sasuke had backpedal and to push back the cage so all of them would avoid the chakra. That energy, as it was at the moment, could melt flesh from bone or perhaps even cancel Ito Tensei, which didn't seem such a good thing at the moment. Naruto would be upset that the thing had been cancelled while he sat back inside his own mind to allow Kurama some freedom. And for that, you will pay. For no one treasons my younger siblings and walks away. And then he pounced. Sasuke saw the man uncover his face and there was his cousin's mangyeko in his eye socket. But Kurama was faster. The clawed hand, paw, slashed across the bastard's face, the red chakra burning the wound as blood splashed around. Danzo cried out, but it was quickly silenced by another swipe across the man's throat as the vocal cords were damaged. Kurama channeled some more of his chakra and brought down his hand paw on the man, breaking bone as well as the floor below. The elder's mouth opened in a soundless scream and Kurama snarled again. May the Shinigami torment you forever. He spat as his chakra covered Danzo's body. It did a quick work. 4 tails worth of chakra was more enough to burn away Abadi, especially one with no previous exposure to such chakra. Kurama backed away, 4 chakra tails waving in the air, the room full with the smell of blood and burning flesh, as well as killing intent. Sasuke's eyes didn't even twitch. The bastard deserved that. For the innocent of his clan, because the children were not yet tainted by the curse, nor the few civilians who never had the Sharingan, and for Itachi. He'd killed his kin and treasoned Itachi. For a very long moment there was silence as everyone stared at Kurama, waiting for him to attack once more. I know you like to finish your own business, Indra, but I promised you and Asura-sama think that day. Or more like I've promised it to Otom-sama. He may or may not have heard that, but it's beside the point. Sasuke hummed. It's quite alright. I would have done the same if Otanto was in a similar situation, although he's not the vengeful sort. Never been. He muttered, his voice cracking at the end. No, he's not. Kurama agreed, now somewhat calmer, although Sasuke knew he would not calm down completely today. Maybe tomorrow, but certainly not today. Sasuke sighed and allowed his eyes to morph into their higher level. He couldn't form Susanoo just yet, but he could summon the armor and fit it to his need. The less of the armor was present, the more he could control it. Besides, he'd been practicing some shape manipulation, which also further enabled him to handle it. Sure, to completely shrink his chakra avatar and make actual human-sized armor out of it that perfectly covered his body, he would need his father's special chakra, but it didn't matter. He stroked Kurama's ear, which appeared in the shape of half-transparent chakra, before he actually reached to touch Naruto's body. "Thank you," he muttered softly. "Now, could you let Otanto have his body back, please?" Kurama huffed and heareth it I could stretch my limbs. "It's better since you two had redone the seal, but it's so boring." Sasuke chuckled. "Oh, what's next? Snowing in the middle of summer? You actually weened. I'm sure Asura wouldn't mind letting you out in the forest of death now and then, as long as you don't ruin everything. Becuous then we would have to fix it and it's annoying to do all the time." Kurama snarled all proper and serious even after all this time. "Now, ik know why I left you to your devices, as a kid." Sasuke rolled his eyes. "Someone has to be the responsible one, between your penchant for destruction and Otanto's pranks. Hey, I hadn't destroyed anything since Senju stuck me in the seal again. Besides, as annoying as Kushina was." Sasuke's eyes narrowed. "Careful fox. You're talking about my godmother." "She was annoying." He huffed but better than Mito, so I suppose it was an improvement. Yeah. You would have liked to tamper on Madara's body and probably wouldn't have minded sallowing Shadame Sama whole, they're still family so no more of that. Oh, and I want my brother back. I'm sure if you make him wait any more, he's going to get whiny and just tamper down your chakra with Mokuton." The fox huffed. "Why did the source of all chakra have to be a tree? And why did Asura figure it out what that chakra can do?" Before Sasuke could answer, Naruto's eyes closed. The chakra slowly retreated and as Naruto opened his eyes again, they were the usual violet. He stood up and looked at the mess Kurama had left. "Ouch. Speak about being pissed off Kitsune." Sasuke hummed. "Yeah." Naruto frowned. "Oh the Shinju, damn it, now all my clothes are ruined." "Oh." He groaned. He should have been cleaner. "The next time he makes Amos, I'm to talent at letting him stretch his legs." Sasuke hummed. "And you would just have listened to him annoying you out of your own mind if you didn't let him out now, Otanto. You know what he's like." Naruto laughed softly. "I know better than anyone here, trust me." Sasuke rolled his eyes. "Off with you. You're not getting dinner if you make a bloody mess of the kitchen." Naruto rolled his eyes. "Last time I checked and plus Sama it's my kitchen because you can't cook shit. So you don't get a say in it." And then he was gone in a swirl of leaves. Sasuke huffed and looked at the three Senju. "Did he ever say I hated that he has a quick tongue?" "No." Hashirama said. "But if it makes you feel better, I think that's a typical Uzumaki trait, like the red hair. Or maybe even more of a typical trait than the red hair." Sasuke snorted. "Why I'm not surprised about it. Maybe because you know him so well," his almost father said. "Now, how about you follow his example and go home, Sasuke? We'll deal with this and stop at home once we're done." Sasuke's eyes narrowed on the two remaining elders who tensed in response at the feeling of his killing intent. Good, let them be wary because he would watch them. Let them remember that even if the Hokage were gone, they could not do as they pleased. Not anymore, useless, they wanted to die as painfully as the warmongering worm on the floor. But I still have a few questions. And we'll provide you with the answers." Tobirama countered in a measured tone. "Do not stir more of the water, young one. We will give you what you wish to know if you let us work." Sasuke sighed, nodding towards the Suiton master. "Very well." And then, he was gone in his own personalisation in a torrent of white-blue fire. Jiraiya's mind still swirled with the scene that had played out in the council chambers. He would have never thought that Minato or the Senju brothers would let the fox do what it did. He had never liked Danzo, but that had been brutal. And why had the fox called the Uchiha Bradindra? The name was familiar from somewhere, but he could not remember where he had heard it before. Because it was obvious, from the way Naruto had looked at the scene, that he had completely retreated into his mind, unaware of the outside world. He shook his head with a sigh. It's not like he could do anything about it. "Jiraiya-sensei." Jiraiya froze at that. He hadn't been called sensei in more than a decade. There was only one person in the village who'd called him that. His two other students had died in the war and only Minato had made it. He turned slowly to face Minato. It was so strange seeing him again. If not for the obvious telltale signs of Ito Tensei, he would have said that his student was still as young and fuller energy as the last day he'd seen him, a few days before Naruto's birth. He was happy to see Minato again, yet he could not help the scratching look that crossed his aged features. "What were you thinking, Minato? You should have stopped the kid from losing control." Minato glared. His glare was so icy that it made him take a step back. He had not lost control. He knew what he was doing and Danzo had deserved it. As much as I respected Hiruzen, he was getting lax in his office and obviously had made the wrong decisions regarding Uchiha Itachi and the clan as a whole. He hissed in a low tone. The Sannin's eyes went wide. That was an S-class secret of which only the Hokage, the elders and himself knew. Had one of the two spilled the beans to the three resurrected men? Probably not. That Jiraiya blamed them too much. After that scene in the council room. Jiraiya sighed. It was a little mess. Minato and Fugaku would not listen. Or rather, his clan council would not. I don't need to know more than he already do. Genocide is genocide, no matter the reason. You could have at least let the children and the civilians live. But no, he sighed. Where is Itachi, Jiraiya? Minato. Where is the boy? Jiraiya winced. His former student wasn't in a good mood. There's this group. He said quietly, Akatsuki. A bunch of S-class missing men from all across the nations. They're led by a masked sharingan user who'd helped Itachi kill the Uchihas. Itachi suspects he's the one behind the Fox's attack 13 years ago. He calls himself Toby. We sent Itachi to join undercover so he could feed us info about them. Minato's eyes went wide for a second as if he came to a realization before the expression was gone. Do you know something, Minato? Maybe something you had no chance to share that night? He asked. Any morsel on the masked bastard could help. Minato shook his head. When he asked him, he said his name was Uchiha Madara. But I'd bet all my savings that both Toby and Uchiha Madara are just false names. The guy is someone else powerful and dangerous, yes, but not Madara. I mentioned my fight with him to the Shadai. He said Madara's Mangekyou didn't possess space-time jutsu. So, it was someone who has enough skill and power to get away with calling himself the ghost of the Uchiha. The Toad summoner grunted. They weren't any closer. Yet guy was dangerous. More than simply dangerous if he could control the fox even with one eye. I'll remember that. He said. Then he looked at his student. Minato's eyes were still as cold as before. You know why I'm here? It was not a question. The Sannin couldn't help but wince. Minato, look. You're his godfather, damn it. He growled. I trusted you. The Sannin sighed. I know and I'm sorry. Just let me expel. No. Minato cut him off in a measured tone. I know enough from Kakashi and Naruto. He also made up with Naruto, but that's only because his heart is one of mercy. I know. He muttered, looking away for a moment. I will not say any more on the subject, Jiraiya. We all make our own decisions. But if you ever make him cry again, the way I heard from Sasuke that you had, I promise you that I will find a way back from death without Ito Tensei, and then, I'll drag you with me. And, his student was gone in a flash of yellow, and Jiraiya was left alone to reflect on the mistakes he'd made. If he ever wanted Naruto to trust him, even a bit, he had a lot of making up to do. Orochimaru winced as Kabuto changed the bandages on his wounds. The Uchiha and Minato's spawn were strong, almost too strong for two genin. Or chinin. He looked down at the wound. It was healing very slowly, slower than before. Is this body already at its limits? He hissed in annoyance. Kabuto sighed as he secured the medical cloth. So it would seem, Orochimaru-sama. Should I prepare another one soon? The Sannin grunted. What of our little Uchiha? Would he be coming to us? Kabuto stopped and looked up at him with a small shake of his head. It would seem that the cursed seal has somehow been removed from his body if what my spies told me is correct. Considering we hadn't seen him activating it during his exam, nor during the invasion, I must presume it is the truth. The snake Sannin froze, rage and disbelief rising to the heights of the Hokage monument. What he snarled, killing intent radiating from him. How had he managed to get rid of it? Not even Jiraiya has figured out its workings yet. It appears one Senju Uzumaki Naruto is more shrewd than your former teammate, my lord. Kabuto answered. Damn your spawn, Namikaze. The resounding scream of frustration could be heard for miles. Naruto sighed as he watched the three Edo Tensei cage stop in their respective sealing circles, each creatively marked with a kanji wood, water, flash. Oh, before I forge it. The Shadai called, offering 2 scrolls to Naruto. Naruto-kun. Naruto stepped closer to the founder and took them. What are these? Well, Jiraiya-san here said you want Tsunade to be the next Hokage. The small scroll is our message for her. He explained. Naruto hummed and passed the small scroll to Sasuke, who immediately tucked it away. And the bigger one? The Shadai's brown eyes met him. All my Mokuton techniques. You're a Senju and in possession of the ability. Many may be familiar, but there were several that I had invented. Study them and use them in the village's defense. The blonde grinned. Arigato. I will be sure to do so. He took a step back to stand next to Sasuke again. It was a small affair letting the 3 cage go. Just Sasuke, Kakashi, Yamato, Jiraiya and himself. No one else was present, although the council knew that today was the day. Good luck in the future, boys. His father said, looking both at him and Sasuke with a smile. And take care. Sasuke hummed, standing little ways away, next to Kakashi. We will. It was an honor. Naruto saw it. His brother had always been a master at hiding his thoughts and emotions, but as time went by, he had learned to read him, like an open book. Living extra lives also helped. The thing was that on the outside, Sasuke seemed calm and just a tiny bit detached. However, in fact, the Uchiha was just as sad to see the three men go as he was. These past weeks really made both of them feel safe and comfortable again. Having a full family. But they had died once. Even the fact that they were here was partially against the laws of nature and ninja. The three of them staying or getting fully resurrected, not that they could do it as neither of them had Rinnegan, would have been even more upsetting for the balance. It could not be. He nodded to the Nidaime too, he'll miss his new favorite pranking partner, and walked over to his father. He carefully crossed into the seal and hugged the older blonde clothes. Aishiteru, Atma-san. His father hugged him back just as tightly. Naru-chan, what did it tell you about it? Naruto chuckled and buried his head even more into the white haori. That's not a habit you gonna break. It's too old for that. His father snickered and hummed. Aishiteru, Naruto. And take care of each other, the four of you, Keep an eye on Kakashi and Tenzo, okay? If they're anything like they used to be as children, they'll need their backs covered by you and Sasuke. Gee, thanks for the vote of confidence, sensei. Kakashi murmured from next to Tenzo and Jiraiya. Don't worry. Sasuke said, and while Naruto couldn't see him now, he colded smirk his brother wore, we'll be extra careful when babysitting our precious Junin senseis. Naruto snickered, and even Jiraiya choked on his laughter at the choice of words and carefully backed out of the Shikia the release jutsu. He crouched down a bit farther from the others and he coaxed his chakra into the surface to channel into the connecting seal, which would power the other three and release the trapped souls. Protect the village and the world with it. The Shodaime said. Sasuke stepped next to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Naruto smiled. Starting this lifetime, they would forever be on it front. Till our last breath. His brother said seriously. Naruto nodded and then placed his hand where needed, channeling chakra. The various kanji lit up one by one with blue light, and as the light reached the separate sealing circles, it turned from blue to white, disintegrating the bodies. There was a shockwave of chakra, which caused a blast of wind, but it was soon gone. As Naruto looked down, he found the array gone just like his family. He sighed. Sasuke squeezed his shoulder in silent comfort and then offered a hand to help him stand. As he stood, Naruto turned towards the remaining three shinobi, whose eyes trailed him and the spot where the Hokage had been in equal parts. What now? He asked. After a heartbeat of silence it was Jiraiya who answered. Now we bring back Tsunade. Are you sure you can't come, Kakashi? Yamato. Sasuke asked, throwing a hopeful glance at the two who made up his surrogate family. Kakashi shook his head. No. The village needs everyone here. Had Naruto been any quieter about his protests, you would be staying too, you know. Sasuke hummed, remembering that conversation well. Naruto had been summoned to the Hokage office and Sasuke had gone with him, as always. The two remaining elders and Jiraiya had been there. The Toad Sannin has expressed his desire to take Naruto out of the village. To find Tsunade he wanted to spend some time with his godson, and he believed that the presence of another Senju may be good enough to persuade Tsunade to return. When they'd been told Sasuke would stay behind, Naruto refused even to move from his spot, useless the decision was changed. Jiraiya could only stand the scowl and the look Naruto was giving him for about 10 minutes before he caved in and changed his wording. Sasuke remembered hearing the Sannin mutter about the blonde learning too much from the Nidaime in the past weeks. The elders hadn't been overly happy either, saying that every able-bodied shinobi was needed right now to help recuperate. But as Naruto's eyes changed from violet to fox-like red, both retired shinobi gave in. I know. Being the Jinchuriki of Kurama also helps. He muttered quietly. Kakashi and Yamato chuckled at that. Hey Uchiha. Are you coming? The Sannin called. Sasuke took a deep breath to remain calm and nodded to his senseis before turning around and heading for the gate. Hurry up kid, Tsunade's not going to stay in one place. Sasuke groaned. This is going to be a long trip. Anzaku guy? Naruto asked. As they crossed into the town he knew for a fact that the place was Athleisure Town. Bathhouses, restaurants, taverns, casinos and one could not forget the shadier part of town either. The red light district. Jiraiya hummed. Yes. Tsunade likes her fun. Naruto's violet eyes narrowed on the man. What fun are you referring to? Jiraiya was quiet for a second. You know, drinking. Gambling. Is she any good at least? Sasuke asked, wrinkling his nose. She has the worst luck in all of the elemental nations. Murmured the white-haired man, with a small frown. Naruto growled. Well, that explains why the Senju account has zeros. Let me guess, if she had access to the Uzumaki one, it would be empty too, right? The spymaster sighed and frowned. Yes. Luckily Mito-sama noticed Tsunade's tendencies, and after Kushina came to the village, she wrote off the account to Kushina's name, so Tsunade had no access to that fortune. Kushina herself had only been informed of her money after she made Jinin, but a conversation with Sarutobi-sensei, and knowing Tsunade, she was happy. Happy that the Uzumaki hadn't gone bankrupt while she grew up. Naruto groaned. Shinju, have mercy. As they passed the buildings, their eyes wandered around. This place is big. His brother growled, how are we going to find her? Well, you usually follow the commotion and the loud swearing. Said the Sannin. Naruto scoffed. I can locate her. What's her chakra nature? Jiraiya blinked at him. Earth. She has about as much chakra as me. Maybe even a bit more, considering her Senju Uzumaki lineage. Naruto closed his eyes and spread his sensory to the fullest. Many signatures assaulted his senses then, so strongly that he took a shuddering breath. But most were civilian-sized or ass-size, that was most common for average Chunin and Junin. Sasuke and Jiraiya stood out the most, their closeness and the strength of their chakra almost blinding, in a figurative sense. Until he felt that chakra. Powerful like Jiraiya's, but much firmer. Earth nature for sure, calm and controlled to the last drop. There was electricity too, energizing, vitalizing. Somehow these two opposing natures were present in the chakra and coexisted, instead of cancelling one another out, a miracle and a feat of chakra control. It also had the faintest trace of the typical Uzumaki adamantine chakra. But nowhere near enough for the individual to form the chains. And it had that warm, serene feel, that was the general undertone for all healers. Right next to the Senju Uzumaki chakra he felt another one. Another medic, but this one not so perfectly controlled. This signature was weaker and had a faint warm feeling to it. He opened his eyes and looked at Jiraiya. I think I found her. Larger than yours, well controlled and a medic for sure. How can you tell? Asked the Sannin, eyebrow arching. Naruto hummed. Medics have ascertained serenitito their chakra, in a sense. Come on, let's not waste time. He nodded to the man and started walking. Sasuke followed him without even uttering a sound. His brother knew well how accurate his sensory could be if he knew what to look for, and he certainly had enough general information on the Sannin to find her. It's impossible to track someone so precisely. Jiraiya murmured behind them. Naruto chose to ignore the comment. The Sannin was unaware of what had been in a different life of what he was truly capable of even now, despite still not having back all the power he possessed in his prime. He hoped they would still have a few years before having to stop the lunatics. Right now, they couldn't fight off two Madachas and their grandmother. Not impossible. Sasuke said, and Naruto saw as he threw a look at his godfather. It may be impossible for an average censor, but not Naruto. He's different. They walked towards the chakra, which he clung onto, until they reached one of the tallest buildings in town. Not so surprisingly, it was Akasino. He shared a look with Sasuke and then he sighed. Here goes nothing. He murmured softly. They stepped in, and despite the crowd, it didn't take long for Naruto to spot her. Now that they're closer, her chakra felt even more powerful. He walked over to her, shoulder to shoulder with Sasuke, and they stopped next to her table. A black-haired young woman sat next to her, holding a pet pig. Who had pig for a pet? Why not a cat or a dog or hell, some sort of bird? Why a pig? She had long blonde hair, held in two pigtails, brown eyes, which Naruto was sure she'd inherited from Hashirama, as they were almost the same and rather large womanly assists. She wore a grey blouse and green haori. The purple rhombus of the byakugan was also a dead giveaway. Are you the slug princess, Tsunade of the Senju? Naruto asked. The woman's brown eyes snapped up to them, her gaze slightly narrowed. Naruto could feel suspicion and curiosity from both her and the black-haired woman. Who wants to know? She asked. Sasuke was the one to answer, his tone just a bit scratching. Uchiha Sasuke and Senju Uzumaki Naruto of Konoha. The effect was instantaneous. Her brown eyes narrowed even more, anger darkening her youthful features, although Naruto suspected that was the work of Ajinjutsu. He felt a thin layer of chakra cover her, from head to toe, like Asukan in invisible skin. Who are you? You dare using my family's name? Who are Yado derusing my family's name? She roared, jumping forward. Naruto channeled chakra into his feet to get away. He landed pressed against one of the tables, but he wasn't overly worried. As she swung her fist, he raised his own hand and enhanced it with chakra the same way she did and caught her punch without a blink. She froze for a second and he shoved her away, glaring. Is it how you greet all your allies, Namekuji Haim? We're Natalie says I didn't even know who you are. She growled back. Naruto's violet eyes narrowed on her. Senju Uzumaki Naruto. Son of Senju Namikaze Minato Kiroi no Senkman Konoha's Yadame and Uzumaki Kushina Haim, heiress of the Uzumaki and chosen of Uzumaki Mito, known as the Akai Shai. He hissed in a low tone. No. She shook her head. Impossible. I was the child's dead. I was told their child had died. Naruto's eyes went wide. So was she calling him Ailier? You abandon family and then you call me Ailier. He growled back to her. Their son is dead. Died from the ceiling. She repeated, angry and desperate at the same time. Naruto felt it. All her feelings, anger, desperation, grief, oh so much grief. He took a deep breath and drew back before her emotions overwhelmed him. He shared a look with Sasuke, who was now leaning against the table where the black-haired girl still stood, studying them both. His brother's face was covered by unreadable calmness, but he gave a tiny nod. Show her, Atanto. Count the seconds how long it takes her to process it, N plus Ama. He countered, only half joking. Tsunade's eyes as well as the other girl's eyes flickered to Sasuke for a moment with a raised eyebrow, but before she could say a word, Naruto flared his chakra. The action caused her to look back at him, and once her whole attention was focused, Naruto released even more of his chakra. Letting everything seep into it. She wasn't a sensor, but there were certain things that if powerful enough could be picked up by non-sensors from a close range. First, he allowed Kurama's chakra to the surface, giving his body a soft, orange glow, and as the malice rolled off of him, everyone in the room staggered to their feet at ran. Her eyes widened. Then, he allowed his own chakra to rise like water from a well, pushing Kurama's chakra down. It rose and rose further and further until Sasuke smirked, and that action alone was enough confirmation for the blonde to know that it was now visible. Tsunade's eyes were even wider, and he took another breath, coaxing a bit more of his power to the surface. She staggered back, looking at him in shock. I believe you. She said at last. Tsunade did not want to believe what she heard from the blonde. No, it was impossible. Only because he had blonde hair, like Minato, and violet eyes that were entirely too much like her former student and cousin, it didn't mean what he said was true. The Anbu agent that had found her after the Fox's attack had said that Kushina and her child, the child they chose to be the next vessel, had died not long after her sensei had made it back to the village with said child and the bodies of the parents. The blonde and the Uchiha, she could believe that, the black hair and eyes and the symbol on his clothes were unmistakable, shared a look. Show her, Atanto. The Uchiha said. The blonde's serious face didn't change. Count the seconds how long it takes her to process it, N plus Ama. Tsunade blinked. That was entirely unexpected. Uchiha didn't get close to anyone outside of their clan. And certainly not so close to call someone their brother. Her thought process was cut off as the blonde's chakra flared. She looked back and she saw an orange glow around him, and the room was filled with the searing chakra of the Kikbi from almost 13 years ago. With the searing chakra also came a wave of killing intent which sent everyone in T-bar running until only the blonde, the Uchiha, Shizune and herself remained. And then, chakra rose this time, it seemed to be the boy's own, as it pushed the foxes back down. It reminded her of both Minato and Kushina at once dense, yet well controlled. But, as it rose, she felt something else. Appresence, a power she had not felt since she was a child. The kid kept dragging more and more chakra forward, such quantities that the energy actually formed a visible, blazing outline around him, the usual light blue tainted by soft green, and there was it again. She'd only ever felt that around her grandfather when he allowed his chakra free. But his chakra had been unique even by Senju Uzumaki standards, as he had the Mokuton. An ability that had not been seen before, nor after. Could it be, she thought, watching the boy wide-eyed. He was 13 at best, and he already had cage-level reserves, and she wasn't a fool. Despite how great his chakra reserves were, despite how dense he had almost perfect control. Gods be good, that kid could be a greater medic than she was, if only taught. The blonde looked at him, his violet eyes burning into her very soul. Minato's hair and face, Kushina's eyes, the gaze holding the sharp edge, like her great uncle's, while his chakra felt like Kushina's and her grandfather's at once. He wasn't lying. I believe you. She said sharply, the words tumbling out of her mouth clumsily. I believe you, she whispered. Slowly, the blonde drew his chakra back and she gasped at the sudden absence of the powerful energy. Blinking to clear her clouded thoughts, she looked to the side. Shizune was wide-eyed, clutching Taunton for dear life, paler than normal. The Uchiha was calmness personified, the small smirk that played on his lips was one of amusement, as if he knew this might happen. What the fuck it? A familiar voice called. Tsunade's gaze slid behind the boy Naruto. Naruto was his name, and she saw her teammate. What was Jiraiya doing here? Do you want to call an entire army? How much chakra was that? Naruto shrugged. She had Thenarveto call me Ailier. Naruto threw her a look, his violet eyes narrowing. Oh, that look was Tobirama Oji-sen just fine. Jiraiya growled. That does not mean you send an entire casino running and then release enough chakra so that even Konoha's sensor teams can feel it. And Thifok chakra on top of that. Okwit no, Sanin. This would not have happened if she calmly listened to Otanto's explanation and then actually stopped to think about it. The Uchiha growled. But she accused him of lying and then attacked him. Call it self-defense, for it was. Be grateful no jutsu had been thrown around. She blinked had those two really called one another brother. An Uchiha and an Uzumaki was the world coming to an end. Or Senju. Was Naruto Minato as well really one of her own? She shook her head and stood up, trying to gather her thoughts. As she did so, her brown eyes landed on the blonde, whose chakra was so eerily similar to her grandfather's. You better explain and do it fast. To her surprise, the blonde matched her gaze without a twitch. He wasn't intimidated at all. You know, trying to intimidate me won't work. The past week I stared down Otam-san, Tobirama Jiji and Hashirama Oji-san. Your chakra presence is nothing compared to theirs. Her eyes went wide. What did you just say? The blonde smirked at her, as if he'd just hit the jackpot of his life. Sit down Oba-san and we will explain. Senju Tobirama and the Uchiha Paint War. Tobirama could not help it. He just had to do it. He had a feeling his grandson may not like this, considering the Uchiha boy was almost like Asuka's son to him, but Tobirama could not help it. Now that he knew from where the two clans' feud stemmed, his weave was a bit different, specifically, with the Uchiha in the village being very much aware of the curse and actively working to avoid it. It was commendable. And the boy was strong for his age, and he could tell that both of the reincarnates may just exceed the power limits of their previous life. If so, those two would be literal gods in human bodies, more than Hashirama and Madara ever were. However, even this revelation and his newfound respect for the Izuna lookalike was not enough to stop him. Years and years of habit was not going to be broken in a few days. So, he made his way to the nearest shop and using some of the money from the Uzumaki account, he could not believe it that the Senju, one of the wealthiest and oldest clan, were totally broke because of his grandniece's bad habits. He was so going to strangle Hashirama. Of course, with the money being in Naruto's hand, he had to ask his great-grandson, but luckily, the blonde had agreed easily enough. He grabbed the paint needed and carried it to the counter. The man blinked at him before snapping out of his shock as realization dawned on his face. He quickly bowed and then set to work. Tobirama gave him the needed money and started his trek back to the Namika's house. Considering that they would not be around for too long, he had found it pointless to place a Hirshin mark in the house, but perhaps he could use the one his grandson had left. He closed his eyes and focused his sensory in the general area of the residence and there. The marker stood out like a bonfire in the dark of night. He focused on it even more and then flared his chakra. The sheer speed of the technique was exhilarating. He had almost forgotten how much he liked his jutsu despite using it only in dire situations and sometimes so he got tactical advantage. The next minute he found himself inside the house, right in the room where his great-grandson was sitting Kekafusa, obviously meditating. However, as he landed in the room, his violet eyes opened and he quirked an eyebrow. Aj plus-an. Tobirama held up the 2 containers of paint and some extra materials he'd gotten. How about a prank, Naruto-kun? Namely, I will introduce you my personal paint war tactics. The sharp glint in the violet eyes was all the answer Tobirama needed. Scene, break. Naruto was a genius, Tobirama had to admit. Atriuzumaki genius, he thought, as he poured the paint into the seals and the small intricate patterns sallowed it all up without missing a drop. And I'll toss this into the water. Naruto said, holding up the tiny package of glitter. Won't he notice? Naruto waved a hand. Nah, he's usually half asleep whenever he deals with clothes. When Tobirama was done filling the seals with paint, he checked the trigger mechanism of the seals one last time. When he was satisfied, he gave the tags to the blonde with a grin. Here they are. Do you know when can we expect a result? The Jinchuriki snickered. In an hour, maybe 2. Tobirama hummed. It wasn't that long and he was a patient man anyway. And this would be worth it. Scene, break. Sasuke sighed as he carried the basket of freshly cleaned clothes out. The line was hung between the 2 great trees at the back of the yard where the sun often shined. The clothes got dried easily. Sometimes, like now, all their training clothes and gear would get piled up so badly that he had to separate the things in 2 different groups to wash. He'd already washed Naruto's yesterday and finally he had the time to do his own. Seriously, sometimes he wished to tell his brother that he should wash his own clothes, but whenever that came to mind, he resolutely focused on something else. His brother's cooking was heavenly, and if extra laundry was the price for that food, so be times when the Otatsuki were considered the unparalleled royalty of the shinobi world. Heck, both their grandmother and father were regarded as gods. Which was just taking form, were long gone. Doing housework wasn't beneath him. He placed down the basket next to him and methodically, one by one, he hung his clothes, careful to leave the least possible wrinkles. He refused to wear wrinkly clothes, which looked like they had been chewed over by Kashi-sensei's dog summons. He still had style and certain expectations, thank you very much. He may no longer be Otatsuki in name, only in soul, but he had his standards, and only because a few thousands of years had passed, he would not be giving those standards up. When he was done, he gave a small sigh and looked at the clothes satisfied. Smelling clean and fresh, completely spotless. Only it washed. He saw the tiny glop of pink on his white vest and his eyes narrowed. He took a step back to allow more light onto the clothes. And as the light hit them, he saw the barely visible outline of seals, which slowly disappeared from the fabric. And as the seals disappeared, their contents were released right onto his clothes. He watched with no small amount of horror as the tiny spots of pink grew and spread on black, gray and oh, kami have mercy note and white. The process didn't take more than a minute, maybe two. The seals had released all the pain inside, coloring all his freshly washed clothing to various shades of pink, from neon pink to soft sakura pink and then almost red. And the glitter all over everything, oh, all the gods above. That evil glitter. Horrifying. Horrifying sight. If he didn't already have a mangyeko sharingan, he was sure the sight before him would have been enough to trigger its activation. He heard snickering from behind his back and it soon turned into loud, echoing belly laughter. Slowly, very slowly Sasuke turned around and found Naruto and the Nidame. Both of them were laughing so hard that tears were streaming down their faces, needing the support of the house's wall to stay upwards. You're a genius, Naruto-kun. Those seals my blood indeed. The Nidai said, not even trying to keep up his usually stoic appearance. His dark red eyes were glinting with unrestrained amusement. The pink paint was your idea, Oji-san. Naruto breathed between laughs. Sasuke's so red. He snarled. Get over here Senju. So I can paint your heads pink too. He roared angrily as a blast of chakra left his body, sharingan whirling into action. Uh-oh, we better go. Fast. Naruto said. Sasuke leapt forwards, pushing chakra into his feet and cracking the ground in the process. He's going to get them for that. Sadly, the Nidame was even faster than he was. The Suiton master wrapped a protective arm around Naruto and then they were gone in a flash. Oh, how much he detested the Hirishin. He growled, skidding to a halt next to the house. He huffed and looked sorrowfully at the now desecrated pink-red pieces of clothing. He would have to. The bird cried above and Sasuke watched in frozen horror as the whitish-black animal wastelanded on his kimono. The most comfortable homie kimono he owned. The one which was now neon pink. Oh, forget washing. He'll just burn every single one. Damn you, Senju here roared in frustration, uncaring of the fact that quite possibly the entire village heard him. Naruto sighed, slipping into a seat opposite from the female Sannin. Sasuke sat next to him and Jiraiya lingered behind them like some form of protector, not that they needed protecting. They could do it for themselves and each other. In the worst of cases, Naruto would let Kurama do the protecting. So, care to explain? Naruto hummed. A traitor tried rigging my graduation months ago and he told me to steal the forbidden scroll. I knew the Sandane would be watching, so if it would be a nice way to reveal him. One of my senseis from the academy, the one who had been nice or at least professional over the years and hadn't tried sabotaging me for the fox he got involved. Found me outside and protected me, got amnesty wound on his back. I lost my cool and then the next thing I know the trees around me are blooming from my chakra. Her eyes went wide in shock, but he continued. I restained him with roots and gave the scroll back to Sandame Sama. During the checkup that night idled the Hokage that I knew who my parents were, we only didn't know which of them had Senju blood. After Adist, he told us it was Otamsan and that he was the grandson of Acerton Suiton Master. And here we are. Our recent Chunin exam finals went down the drain when your snake-faced former teammate orchestrated an invasion with Suna. Sasuke and stopped the Ichibijinch Kriki, Gaara from losing it and went to help the Sandame. He fought the snake and we dealt with the family. Orochi team redirected the three of them to ensure Konoha's destruction. We broke his control over them, so they helped protect the village. They spent the past week or so in Konoha, helping me and Sasuke train. And now that they're gone, here we are. Her eyes were wide, very very wide in Naruto's opinion. The disbelief that was coming from her was so strong that Naruto thought she would call bullshit on his words. But then, she just scowled and shook her head. And what do I have to do with this? We need a new cage, of course. Sasuke said calmly. The elders want you to take the mantle of Godame, seeing that so far, the past three Senju who'd led the village ensured its survival, and despite certain dire circumstances during their reign, they also brought relative prosperity. Tsunade scowled and glared at them. And everyone whom I loathed and had touched that accursed hat or even thought about taking it had died. I will not take it. Sasuke scowled. The stability of the village hangs on this, we need a leader. Who better than a senju, related to 3 past cages and student of the one, wasn't a senju. And what would you know about that, kid? You and Uchiha no members of your family ever truly sacrificing anything for Konoha. The last one, who was cage level, had in fact tried to destroy it. Her words were cut off by powerful killing intent radiating from both of them. There were those, woe had not fallen. Sasuke hissed, his eyes flashing with the sharingan. A few, but there were members of my clan who had not given in to the curse of hatred. Some who'd overcome it, and those people were the greatest. Uchiha King Madara can't hold a candle to the masselfish madman who tried to destroy what he'd created, will never be like the few who understood that the sharingan does not make us invincible. And that there is more to the world than the clan or some sort of revenge for petty things. And you, Naruto growled, if I did not know any better, I would say it was you who had fallen to that infamous curse. Senju and Uzumaki stick together, we protect our own trough thick and thin, we fight for what we believe in. For what is right. Because if we didn't, then who will? The past cage of the village stood tall and proud, protecting what they believed in. Protecting their dream of a safer future. Protecting their comrades and friends, no, their family. For the village is a family, and as long as one has breath in their body, we protect one another. That is what Hashirama Oji-san called so catchily, the Hai no Ishi. I lamented the fall of my kin. Sasuke muttered. I thought no one ever will be Sabbat or such a coward to turn their back to the village, to twist the ideals of peace that were rooted in the days of the Rikiden Sennin, as the Uchiha had. But it seems, the world we and the Hokage had dreamt of is indeed out of reach if a senju like you would rather be a coward and embrace the curse instead of fighting and taking responsibility. Sasuke glared at her one last time and stood up. Come now, Otanto. Obviously the faith her family has placed in her was in vain. If my kin were drowned in shame for what had been going on for so long, then she is the only and greatest stain on the unbreakable will of your own clans. Uchiha, Senju, Uzumaki. We don't leave our own behind. She did just it, she's not worth your time and certainly not your tears. Naruto's breath hitched as he remembered crying after Jiraiya appeared. He remembered wondering if there was anyone out here who cared. He scowled at her and then slammed the scroll Hashirama had given him on the table. My question is, Tsunade Haim, what are you? A senju Uzumaki who stands up for her blood and for what is right, or are you perhaps a weak-willed, nameless civilian who leaves others behind to save her own skin? He stood up. Think about it, Oba-san. Think and decide. Don't think you're the only one who's lost loved ones. We'll know what it's like to lose people. People you love more than the world. People for whom you would burn the world if it meant their happiness. He said, gesturing at Sasuke, Jiraiya and himself. We all know what it's like to be alone. Sasuke said, his tone cracking a bit. To blame yourself or perhaps blame someone, because blaming someone is always easier for what happened and dwell on what ifs. But the past cannot be changed. The hurt, the blood and the shadows will always linger. The question is, are you strong enough to stand up, say sorry and start anew? Are you strong enough that in starting anew, you'll do your best to honor their legacy and memory? He asked at last. He waited a little, but the woman didn't answer. He sighed. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. All of them who remain, a shame on the Rikid men, on the Sennin's dream of peace. We, who were trusted the world, we are the ones to tear it apart. But how can we hold it together when our families are traitors and cowards or had been spat on in death? Shaking his head, the blonde headed towards the door, Sasuke shuffling next to him quietly. Despite what they'd heard from the Hokages about Tsunade, they'd hope it should change, just bit towards the better. That she would be responsible and worthy enough to take up the hat and govern the village until Naruto himself was old enough to take over. Because, lunatic Uchihas and vengeful, non-human grandmothers aside, the blended went to be Hokage. Alas, the love of the Senju and the fierceness of the Uzumaki had long died out from her. She didn't even have a spark of Hihi no Ishi, much less a burning inferno bright and powerful enough to protect and guide Konoha. Jiraiya sat by the table of the hotel they decided to spend the night in. They were having dinner while the boys were eating. He was too busy thinking about what they said to Tsunade to actually eat. The food was good, but his thoughts were all over the place, so he couldn't focus. Just what were those two made of? They surely didn't act like children or even young shinobi their age. Calm, reasonable, noble, focused, and their years, as if they were speaking from their own experiences. Of course, he knew both boys had a less than ideal start, but that didn't explain their mindset. In fact, it was the way they'd started off that made it even more astonishing. They had not been crushed and consumed by the loneliness and darkness that lingered around them. In fact, perhaps, whenever one of them was starting to fall, the other would pull them out and they would be all the stronger for it. They were, Jiraiya thought softly, the students his sensei would have deserved. Orochimaru has gone mad with his pursuit of power and immortality. And Tsunade and himself were far from reasonable or responsible after the Kikbi attack. These two on the other hand. We should train a bit tomorrow. He said at last to break the thick silence that has settled around them. The boys looked at him with raised eyebrows. You gave Tsunade things to think about. She would either think them trough and come to us or she would just run. You two did more than I could have. From now on, it's her decision and regardless of her choice, you won't be at fault. Naruto gave a small scowl. Not that we'd take the responsibility and consequences of a coward's choices. He's right. Sasuke said, his face calmer, but Jiraiya could see the underlying steel. If she says no, she will be a missing nin and we all know it. We didn't tell that to her, but she's smart enough to know it. The sand and barely suppressed attired these two grown up enough to put even him or Tsunade to shame when it came to responsibilities and Minced. He felt like instead of teaching them he couldn't just teach Naruto, the Uchiha would know anyway, so he was kind of involuntarily teaching both, not that there was much taughtage they were teaching him. Teaching him about a side of the shinobi life, about the world, which he had not known before. And maybe just maybe, he would listen. After all, they didn't say anything idiotic since he'd met them. He just hoped Tsunade would make the right choice as well. Leonardo, it seems your son lives up to those high standards set in front of him, even exceeds them. And Sasuke's right there with Naruto every step of the way. He's broken his curse and now they walk side by side. It seems you and the Senju brothers have left the village in the best of hands. Kushina would be proud of them both, that's for sure. He thought. Hello Tsunade. Long time no see. Tsunade froze at the words hissed behind her back. There was only one person she turned to face her former teammate with a glare. She was in no mood to deal with him, not after what the blonde and the Uchiha rubbed in her face. She hadn't left her, they died while she was alive, she had been left behind, right? What do you want, Orochimaru? She demanded coldly. Well, you see I had Anasty battle and I need some healing. Who better than the best medic, my old teammate? As he darted closer, she noticed that his arms were missing. Whatever Sabutobi-sensei had done had been a blow to him. And why would I help a twisted soul like you? She asked. His yellow eyes flashed. Because I can give you back what you've lost, Tsunade. I can bring back your family, so you won't be alone. Her eyes narrowed, recalling what Naruto had said about Orochimaru using her uncle's twisted jutsu to bring back the dead, to use them, those who built the village, to destroy it. It left a bitter taste in her mouth. But fighting Orochimaru wasn't a good idea, not here, in town. She may have strayed from the path her family had hoped she would follow, but she was still a medic. Preserving innocent lives was still a priority, and she could very well avoid fighting him now and possibly ruining the place. Well? What do you say? I could see Dan again? She asked in a quiet tone. It had been so long ago, so long, that she almost forgot what it was like to have him by her side. To be wrapped in his embrace. Orochimaru smiled, although she could see it was far from genuine, and nodded. If that is your wish, yes. We fight for what we believe in. For what is right. Because if we didn't, then who will? The past cage of the village stood tall and proud, protecting what they believed in. Naruto's words echoed in her head and they cut like her uncle's rage in no ken. Precise and shockingly painful. Give me a day to think on it. Orochimaru frowned a bit but then nodded. Be by the forest tomorrow midday and remember. The reward for helping me is being reunited with your family. She watched him go, rooted to her spot, angered, upset and numb all the same. What was she to do now? Jiraiya would come hounding her soon too. Perhaps she could leave beforehand. Tsunade-sama, Shizune called, her voice quivering a bit. She threw one last dark glaze at the spot where the snake summoner stood just minutes ago. Pack everything, Shizune. We're leaving this place as soon as possible. She said, heading towards the casino where their room was. Still, as she stowed away, more angry and saddened than anything, angry at Orochimaru, at Jiraiya, at her family, the words came back again. Sharp and powerful, in a way she only ever remembered her grandfather's words to be. We fight for what we believe in. For what is right. Because if we didn't, then who will? The past cage of the village stood tall and proud, protecting what they believed in. When Naruto woke, Sasuke was already getting dressed. Unlike at home, he couldn't sleep here. The knowledge that they were out of Konoha set him on edge, making his mind more awake despite the early hour. They decided to share a room, as it was a more coin-friendly solution. Not that either of them were short on money, with Sasuke having all the Uchiha fortune in him, the Uzumaki account, as well as his father's separate one. But still, best think over about what needed to be paid and what could be used to cut their expenses. Morning, Anto. Shall we go down and eat something? He flashed his brother a grin. Sure, and Plasama. Just give me a minute. He climbed from under his covers too and hurriedly dressed, checking twice to have his utility belt and weapons. Satisfied, they stepped out onto the corridor. Naruto knocked on the door next to theirs, knowing that it had been Jiraiya's. When he opened the door, they found a girl a few years older than them, already cleaning. "Good morning," Naruto greeted, gaining her attention. The girl stopped in her chore and looked up. "Good morning. How may I help?" This room was rented by a tall man with dark eyes and long, white hair. "He's our companion. Do you know where he may be?" Sasuke asked. She nodded. "Yes. I've seen him leave a few hours ago. He seemed to be in a hurry." Naruto's eyebrows knitted together. "Did you, by chance, see where he went? Or did he perhaps mention something?" "He was hurrying towards Third Lotus Bathhouse. I think you leave the building and take a turn to the left and then, when you reach the crossroad, you take a right turn. That road will take you to the bathhouses. The one you're looking for is the biggest one in town." Naruto shared an irate look with Sasuke. Speak about the man being a pervert. Kurama rumbled into their minds. "To me it seems he's even more perverted than he was when Kushina and Minato were alive." Naruto smiled at the girl and nodded. "Thank you for the information. Have a nice day." They left the place in a hurry, following the girl's instructions, while Naruto's senses were spread wide, trying to spot anything familiar. Halfway there, Naruto stopped, freezing on the spot like a hound, which caught the scent. "Sasuke. The snake's in town. And my gambling addict of an aunt seems to be there, as well. The hell with that pervert. The other two are more important right now," his brother said, his sharingan spinning to life in an instant. "Agreed," he said as they sped off towards the signatures. As it appeared, the Sannin had been faster than they were, Naruto noted, as they skidded to a halt on the edge of the clearing. Orochimaru and Kabuto were already fighting Jiraiya and Tsunade, while Shizune lingered to the side, watching and worry. Without a word, the two genin hurried over to the medic apprentice. "Shizune-san, what's going on?" Naruto asked urgently, half his gaze on the earth-shattering fight. "Orochimaru approached us after you left and Tsunade-sama wanted to leave before either of you caught up. Orochimaru expected it and intercepted us, and I think Jiraiya-sama had seen us or Orochimaru, so he followed." Sasuke cursed colorfully and then they turned to watch the fight. Even they understood that this was as much between enemies as much it was between former teammates. And everything looked just fine until Tsunade got wounded, coloring Kabuto's kunai red. "Oh, no." Shizune gasped in worry, her black eyes widening. "What now?" Sasuke asked, muscles tense. "Tsunade-sama, she has hemophobia," Shizune answered. Naruto groaned. "Are you serious? She's a Shinju fucking medic." Shizune nodded, her eyes flashing at his sharp tone. "Oh, Autumn-sama, give me strength not to strangle my own kin," he murmured. He shared a look with Sasuke and both of them leapt into the fight. Naruto was just fast enough to catch Kabuto's fist flying towards the frozen swand. His violet eyes narrowed on the silver-haired traitor. "Take your filthy hands off of my family, fucker," he snarled. "Shirai-han. Yamakaji white flames." "Wildfire," Sasuke called, breathing out a stream of white fire. Knowing the strength of the flames, he brached himself, but his brother had perfect aim. The flames ghosted past him and Tsunade, the heat searing. What are you doing here?" Tsunade asked in shock. "Leave you two or they'll take you to splinters." Naruto snorted, throwing her a look. "No, they won't. Now. Will you stand up and fight? Or will you let them win? Let your fears win." The rest he wanted to say was cut off as he saw Kabuto form chakra scalpels around his hands. One even scraped Sasuke, drawing blood. Naruto leapt forwards and luckily for him, the silver-haired man was right on the ground. "I told you to leave my family alone," he roared, slamming his fist onto the ground, sending the other flying as the earth ruptured under the blow. Kabuto cursed and performed a kawarimi, however, sadly for him Sasuke was already waiting for him with his tent drawn. Kabuto blocked the weapon with his own, clashing a few times with Sasuke, forcing the uchiha back. Naruto's eyes narrowed and chakra chains shot from his back to bind the silver-haired man, but Kabuto managed to evade them and started retreating. Naruto paused, noticing the lull in the fight, as Orochimaru and his disciple put some extra distance between them. Tsunade was still in shock, unmoved from her spot. "How about we finish this fast?" Orochimaru hissed, running trough hand signs at a blinding speed. Still, Sasuke managed to catch them and soon, all four of them were going trough the same signs. Even their hands touched the ground together. "Uchiha no Jutsu. Manda. Uchiha no Jutsu." Gambabunta, the two former teammates, cried together. "Uchiha. Genhidzu," Naruto called. "Uchiha. Kibagatsuki," Sasuke cried. The four plumes of smoke were so great that they covered the entire clearing for a moment before it cleared to reveal four gargantuan creatures. An orange toad, a purple snake, a gray and cream stag and a white and blue wolf with great fangs. "What the fuck?" Orochimaru called, looking at the two summons he had never seen before. "What are Yautwo? Freaks of nature." Naruto smiled, knowing what would come. 3, 2 he counted gleefully. "What did you just say, you mortal scum?" thundered Kibagatsuki. "What did Youter calling my summoner and his brother?" Naruto laughed, bowing his head to the great wolf. A pleasure to see you once more, Kibigatsuki-sama. This time in more favorable circumstances. The wolf nodded back, and then Naruto flared his chakra, his hands flashing trough two hand signs in a blink. Mokuton. Makise JK, no Yoroi. Wood release. Wooden beast armor. Wood grew from the ground, shocking the three Sannin, Tsunade the most, as she had never again expected to see the ability. And then it wrapped around Genhidzoom, forming a perfect armor. And now, you're going down, freak. Naruto called, as his summon leapt forth to tackle Manda. The two rolled and struggled for a moment, the snake having hard time in grabbing hold of the stag due to his sharp antlers, and the sturdy armor wasn't helping much either. Seeing that blinting his opponent was no use, Manda tried wrapping around the stag, only for Kibigatsuki to catch his tail and fling him at Gambabunta. Gambabunta leapt onto the snake, almost crushing him, but still, Manda buried himself in the ground, disappearing from sight. Not wanting to give the enemy any advantage at all, Genhidzoom stomped the ground and scarred it with his antlers, the release chakra breaking the ground, revealing the snake. Summon and summoner leapt right towards Sasuke. However, Jiraiya and Gambabunta interfered. Heian. Gameu end in fire release. Toad oil flame bullet. Orochimaru escaped with a Kawarimi. However, the flames caught Manda, and then the four watched with some satisfaction at the great snake shed its skin to escape. Then, before anyone had the chance to properly recover, Tsunade leapt right at Orochimaru, punching him in the face. Naruto looked down at his summon. Genhidzoom-sama, would you mind lending me some chakra? I'm afraid, even with Kurama here I'm not as strong as I used to be. Not at all, Asura-sama. The stag answered calmly, and Naruto's breath hitched as he felt the link forming between them. Naruto shared a look with Sasuke as he felt his summon's chakra connect with his own. By the looks of it, his brother was borrowing some chakra from his own partner, not that it was a surprise. He waited for Sasuke to go trough his hand signs. They released the techniques together, aimed towards Manda and Orochimaru. Tsunade could see him, so he hoped the medic would have the presence of mind to get away when the move was close. Himryoku. Shakutan. Asahi cooperation. Scorch release. Rising sun, they annoyance together. The usually red-orange flames were colored into bluish red. The wide stream hit Manda and the snake hissed before disappearing in a plume of smoke. Then, they saw as Tsunade punched Orochimaru in the face, sending the black hired man flying. Naruto groaned, looking at his summon, as he dropped the wood encasing the magnificent stag. Arigato. You may return home, Genhidzoom-sama. The animal looked at him with a critical eye, probably studying him. Stay out of trouble for now, young one. You are quite exhausted. Naruto hummed as he jumped down from his head. Will do. Then, the stag was gone, and Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. Further away, Tsunade and Jiraiya were still struggling with Orochimaru. Naruto staggered over to Sasuke and they watched a fight from a safe distance, trying to catch their breath. After a particularly nasty punch to the face, the snake Sannin let loose a stream of curses at his former teammates before disappearing with his companion in tow. Now, one problem less at least, for now. Sasuke grunted. Naruto threw his hand around him to support his brother, and Sasuke did the same. Yeah, for now. He agreed as they walked over to the two remaining Sannin and Shizune. Tsunade looked at them at him in shock. Why didn't you stay away? You could have died. Reckless brats. Naruto shared a look with Sasuke and then they smiled. Why? Easy Senju. Sasuke said, his tone lilting sharply as he spoke the clan name, which caused her to narrow her eyes. A wise man once said that those of Konoha civilian, shinobi, children, adults and old are all family and family protect one another. And that together we could do a lot of things, as long as that family could count on the support of others. And Naruto's eyes narrowed on her, you may not weave them as your family, but no one can escape their ancestry. You are part of that family, like it or not. The Senju are one of the pillars of that society. Pillars of that family, who support one another, trough thick and thin. Well, I'm not happy you're spitting on Jiji's and Oji-san's legacy. I can understand that grief, disappointment and anger can drive even the strongest to the breaking point. You just have to decide wanting to get away from that fracture in your life, the dark. It's a question of decision, and as long as you believe, as long as you have even in person believing in you, then you can do it. To start again and do it better. Tsunade looked at them with wide eyes, her mouth parted in shock. She looked as if she saw a ghost. After a long moment, she walked closer, studying them immensely. You know, you two are like them. Just as they were when I was a kid. She said, her voice a mix of nostalgia, shock and grief. Like who? Naruto asked, arching an eyebrow, fighting to stay conscious. Like Hashirama, Jiji and Madara. She whispered. Sasuke snorted. Anything like Themitman, who enslaved Afreet being, just to use it as open. Tsunade shook her head, understanding the veiled message. There was a time when Madara was not mad or hateful. There was a time when he wasn't so bitter. There was a time when I remember that Omniscent said that sometimes it was like they were more brothers than Gigi and Oji-san. You two are like that. It's like seeing them again before Madara was consumed by the curse. Although my memories of that time are brief. Naruto hummed. We're trying to do better than they had, Opa-san. We're trying to avoid the mistakes they'd made. And you're doing it just right. The will of fire is strong in you too. They made the right decision, trusting you. And she reached to her neck and untied her necklace, and Shizune gasped. I trust you too, as well. You reminded me what it means to hold the will of fire and interest you, like they had. She slipped her hands around Naruto's neck and tied it. As she pulled her hands away, the bluish-green crystal fell onto the blonde's chest. Naruto's eyes went wide as he felt the crystal's power. That's a chakra-amplifying crystal. If all of these had been gone for ages, his gaze snapped at Tsunade in shock. What? That was Hashirama Jiji's. It helped protect him and our family, or so, he claimed. Now I give it to you, Naruto. You have his spirit, you know. That fire. Not only his Mokuton, but his fire, too. May it guide and protect you in the future, as it had protected him. Naruto grinned at her. Arigato, Oba-san. He murmured. However, before anything else could be said, Sasuke passed out, causing the blonde to panic. Then plus he flailed for a moment and then knelt down, molding his chakra to help his brother, only for all the chakra usage and exhaustion to catch up to him as well. The green medical chakra faded from his hands and he passed out cold, right next to Sasuke. Sasuke woke with a massive headache. His body felt like stone, and even breathing seemed to be exhausting. Despite just waking up, his eyelids were already dropping, and he was fighting sleep again. Ah, no. You don't sleep just yet. Eat, if you're awake anyway. A calm, kind yet stern female voice instructed, and he felt a hand wrapping around his body. He tensed, his chakra surging forwards in a protective wave, despite his exhaustion. Uchiha-san, please. I just wished to help. Sasuke blinked and tried focusing. It was a black-haired woman, with black eyes. If Sasuke didn't know any better, he would have said she was an Uchiha. Her coloring passed for one. Then, as she helped him sit up, his back pressed against the wall, with Apollo in between, he recognized her. Shizune. Senju Tsunade's student. Here, eat. She said, offering a small blow of rice. Sasuke took it without question and started nibbling at the food. He knew that if this was a chakra exhaustion and it was, embarrassing. Then he would need to recover his strength. Which meant proper meals, enough water and a lot of sleep. And no training for a few days, for sure. Where are we? He asked, after swallowing some of the food. Even his voice sounded strained and tired. Why? Why was he as defenseless as an academy student compared to what he had been capable of? Carving valleys using Susanoo for days and now a single jutsu and summoning his boss partner had been enough to deplete his chakra so that he needed the wolf's help to pull off that collaboration. True, despite their injuries being healed, neither him nor Naruto have taken a real break between the invasion and this trip. After all, they had trained pretty hard with the Hokage around, and they may or may not have played down their injuries and exhaustion in front of Hashirama, so the older Senju wouldn't notice. It was a stupid idea. He decided at last, with a mental sigh. We should just have admitted how strained our bodies were, instead of playing it down. Still intense Akugai. She said. We decided to let you two recover somewhat before heading back to the village. Mto? He asked, his eyes flickering to the motionless form of his brother. He's fine, just tired like you. He woke in 8 hours ago, but it's expected. He heals faster than normal people. Sasuke grunted. Stupid Senju Uzumaki vitality. Stupid nine-tailed furbid. He muttered under his breath. Unfair. Shizune snickered softly, but she didn't comment, so he finished his food in silence and as fast as it was possible, while still keeping his good manners. When he was done, he gave the bowl back to the woman and slipped under the covers again. Next time you wake up, maybe we can set off for Konoha. She remarked quietly. The comment eased his mind and he slipped into a dreamless slumber, the warm food settling comfortably in his stomach. The journey back to the village was spent in tense silence. Naruto hated it, but he didn't feel like breaking it either. Tsunade's burning gaze was heavy, it was as if the Sannin wanted to say something, yet held it back. Naruto had a very good idea what she wanted to say. She wanted to ask how it was that he had the Mokuton again when she or her father, who was the man's direct descendant, didn't. She probably also wanted to ask about his fighting style, so much like her own, yet different. She probably also wanted to ask about the summons, like everyone. Jiraiya had tried asking them about the contracts too, several times in fact, but they had purposefully left the man in the dark. Kakashi and Yamato knowing finding out was inevitable. They were a team. Telling the Sannin could be easily and comfortably avoided. On the outside, it was tense silence. On the inside, the three brothers were having a conversation and the boys were trying hard to keep it to themselves. Her face was priceless when she was looking at you. After the summoning and the armor. Kurama. Be nice. Naruto chided lightly. But Anto, you have to admit, her face had been priceless. Sasuke said. His voice in his mind was weak, a mere whisper. It would have been easier to keep a link if his brother had his sharingan active, but that was not to be. Unlike in their previous life, Sasuke no longer felt the need to set himself apart from others. And he had come to despise how much his clan had depended on the sharingan after reading certain documents and hearing the accounts of the cage before Ito Tensei had been released. Naruto rolled his eyes and gave a pointed look to the Uchiha, which earned an eye roll. Are you two having fun? Jiraiya asked, his eyes skipping between them. Those looks like a sick couple. Naruto choked. Nani, he's my brother. Don't be disgusting. He's malign me brother. Sasuke said, their glares directed at the spy master. Oh, hey okay. Clam down, I was just joking. Jiraiya apologized. The Sannin muttered something about them not getting a joke, but Naruto couldn't catch the whole thing. Sasuke on the other hand, probably caught it and scowled. Obviously, you don't get what it's like to know someone so well that you don't need words to speak. He pointed out. Okay, that was not true. They still needed words for complex conversations, but most of the time, a handson, a look or a gesture was enough to know what the other wanted. Well, just to let you. It's Konoha. Shizune cut them off way too cheerfully, making a gesture ahead. We're here. Naruto and Sasuke stood side by side on the stone face of the yondaime, listening to the muted cheers of the crowd as everyone celebrated the newly crowned Hokage. Long may she reign. Naruto said, his words carried by the gentle, warm breeze. Sasuke hummed. What do you think how long it will take her to reach the point where she wants to strangle the old coots? Danzo may be out of the way, but I can say that it risked the other two, either. We have no evidence against them and don't forget it, and plus we're no longer the sons of the Sennin, for whom people look for guidance. We're just young clueless children. Talented ones and the last of the founding clans, but still just. Sasuke scowled. Children, who have more common sense than half of the village's shinobi. That matters not and you know it. He grunted. We should try tracking Zetsu. This messes his work and if we want to stop this, we'll have to get rid of Zetsu too. Perhaps getting rid of him first would be the best choice. Sasuke sighed. He's been hiding for so long, stalling. He's elusive. He may not know we remember but. Naruto pouted. True. So what then? Should we try reaching out to the Kagaya and the Hyuga? They carry a part of Otatsuki's legacy as well. And frankly, my encounters with them had made a lasting impression, in a bad sense. Their so-called prodigy is cold, full of bitterness and hate, and their heir is Itachi. I didn't have anything against Hinata, but if that bunch is just a bit as we used to be, then they will walk over her, even before she becomes a head. Sasuke hummed, sighing. And the Kagaya. From what I know, most of them are gone. Those who remain are regarded as bloodthirsty savages. They seem to have lost access to their Kekkei Genkai as well. Naruto blinked, arching an eyebrow. What? But Homura Oji-sama's blood it had been so strong. How? Sasuke shook his head. I don't know. However, the Uchiha's sentence was cut off as a cat-masked Anbu appeared behind them. Both genin shifted slowly, studying the operative with sharp eyes. Nico-san. Naruto greeted. Uchiha-san, Senju-san, Hokage-sama wishes to see you. She stated. The boys shared a brief look before nodding. When they made it to the Hokage's office, they noted with some surprise that the rest of their peers were present as well. Tsunade sat behind the massive table the Hokages had in front of her, a faint smile on her face. naruXsaku and the two elders stood behind her, with Jiraiya lingering off to the side. Once they stopped, eyeing Tsunade, the medic spoke. After careful consideration, based on the accounts of your performance during the exams and the invasion, she reached for something, which was off her table, we made our decisions. You've all shown skills and mindset worthy of Konoha shinobi. As she pulled out a fist, she looked at Shikamaru. Shikamaru, you're an excellent tactician, despite your age. Well, you have given up your match, your performance helped along your team and also helped them perform better and stay safe in the invasion. For that, you are prompted to chiknin. She tossed him the vest and he caught it. Mendakus. He murmured with a nod, causing Ino to glare. Thank you, Hokage-sama. One by one, Tsunade listed all the positive qualities of each person present, pointing out flaws that should be worked on in the future to help them improve. And as she listed the names, chiknin vests were distributed among each of them. The pleased expressions and the congratulations passed between them all, in good spirits. Once the group quieted down, they all realized that Tsunade hadn't called out Naruto and Sasuke. Everyone's eyes settled on the boys, occasionally flickering to the Hokage, waiting for her to speak. After a long moment of silence, she did. Uchiha Sasuke and Senju Uzumaki Naruto. Both stood straighter at their names being spoken, studying the Hokage curiously. According to the accounts, the two of you have stole the 3 resurrected Hokage, which allowed Sarutobi-sensei to deal great wounds to Orochimaru. You two hadn't enlisted to let them, but freed them from Orochimaru's control to aid the village. You kept an instable Jinchuriki in check until his seal could be redone and so stopped Shukaku from laying waste to the village. And lastly, your timely appearance outside Tenzakugai had saved my life. Once more, you demonstrated teamwork beyond that of teams so recently formed. You showed tactical maneuvers, raw power, teamwork of the highest caliber and a mature mindset that makes people wonder. I dare say, others could and can learn from you. Not only your peers, but those older than you, by decades. The boys shared a brief look and smiled slightly. Arigato, Hokage-sama. Tsunade smiled and tossed 2 green vests at them, which they caught on instinct. Naruto, Sasuke, for your outstanding performance and for the will of fire that burns so brightly in you, as my grandfather would have said, hereby you are Takubetsu Jinin of Konohagakure. As the cheers quieted down, Naruto looked at the group with a smile. Hey, guys. What about some food at the Akimichi's barbecue place? You're all my guests. Sasuke rolled his eyes. You wanted to say guests, Otanto. Considering the minus on the Senju account, you only have the Uzumaki one. True, the fortune of an entire clan, which has been growing over the years, but still. Naruto huffed. Whatever. He looked back at the others. So? All the Chunin shared looks and then they agreed, Lee and Kiba being the loudest. Far from wanting to break your moment, Tsunade spoke up again, drawing many eyes to her. But I would like to speak with my newest Hokage. They will join you shortly. After several nods, the group left, only leaving the brothers and the 2 Sannin in the office. What is it you wanted to speak to us about, Hokage-sama? Naruto asked. Tsunade seemed thoughtful for a moment. Usually this is not done. But I would like you two to join us our most recent investigation, as it concerns you both, I believe. What investigation? Danzo's death means we can put an end to his shady operations and disband his little organization, which we know as Root. Sarutobi-sensei had ordered it disbanded a while after the Kikbi attack, but it was obviously not done. The Root headquarters had been found underground. Now, the 2 of you are involved, not only because of the discovery regarding the Uchihas. Here she threw a look at Jiraiya, but also because of the Kikbi. Naruto frowned. What does my Jinchuriki status have to do with this? He wanted to make you his personal little weapon. Jiraiya said darky. Myself and Sarutobi-sensei struggled for years to keep his hands off of you. To give you a normal childhood. I think he would have tried getting his hands on Sasuke too, for his sharingan, but he dropped dead sooner. Good riddance. Sasuke hissed. If he wasn't already gutted, I will gut him now. Tsunade didn't say anything, only continued after a moment. There'll be several Anbu squads tonight. Jiraiya will also join, and since it's an operation inside the village, we thought it would be good for you to learn some more professionalism and intelligence gathering. Yamato and Kakashi will be considered active Anbu operatives for this occasion, and the 4 of you will be a team. They shared a look and nodded. Understood, Hokage-sama. It'll be marked in your files as honor rank mission, and you will get payment for it accordingly. Yamato and Kakashi will seek you out a few hours before the mission. And don't mention this to your peers. Understood. Tsunade nodded. Dismissed. Go, have some fun with your friends. Kami knows you two are way too mature and serious. Enjoy life while you can. Jiraiya watched the duo leave with a thoughtful look. Once he was sure they were gone, the Gama Sennin turned back to his teammate. Are you sure this was a good idea? The promotion and involving them? Tsunade nodded. They are far more talented than the rest of the group, but he also understands Homura and Kaharu's reluctance to make those 2 full-fledged Chunin. Climbing the ranks too fast might break them, no matter how strong they seem right now. Climbing fast has almost broken Kakashi, coupled with the loss of his team. And while Itachi is still loyal, yarn it making me eat the bullshit that he is completely healthy, mentally speaking. Jiraiya sighed. I would think he's burdened too. Fugaku was an ass always been. It's a kind of surprise that Itachi turned out the way he is, with that man for father. Tsunade grunted and then looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Speaking of Itachi, do we have news about Akatsuki? Jiraiya grunted in irritation. No. It seems that for some reason, Akatsuki has been more careful. From what Itachi told me last time we met, they're gathering funds to launch something big or something that may lead to them hunting the Jinchuriki. Perhaps sooner than we first anticipated. Which brings us to Naruto. Tsunade murmured, taking a swing of her sake. Jiraiya noted that ever since that fight with Orochimaru, he saw his teammate drink less. She still drank, but the amount had been decreased greatly. It was surprising to see her turn around in such a short time. Naruto's really good with words. He knows how to convince people. And while the Uchiha speaks less, his words are no less dangerous. In fact, his words had seemed to give more weight to Naruto's little lesson. Those two together they could take the world and rule it as long as they're side by side. Jiraiya thought. That realization was mind-blowing, even for him. Those two worked together like no other. They covered each other's weaknesses and their strengths seemed to support one another. Yes. Jiraiya agreed. I would say I went to train him to take him away from here to help him prepare for Akatsuki. Tsunade shook her head. I don't know them well just yet, but I didn't think they would agree to being separately for more than a week. Neither Sasuke nor Naruto. In fact, in the light of the past, I'd say that Naruto is Sasuke's anchor to Konoha. If not for Naruto, we may have a sharingan-wielding criminal running wild. Jiraiya huffed. Probably. And I didn't seem to be able to teach them separately. Whatever I've shown Naruto so far, Sasuke had also seen it. True, he uses little of what I've shown, but, and then there's Naruto. He seems to be determined to pursue a medical profession. To be a frontline medic, like you. Fighting and healing all at once. Tsunade's hand froze mid-swing and she slowly placed the alcohol bottle on the desk. What? Him? A medic, he's the freaking Kikbijinch Kriki, has not going to have enough control, not with his half Uzumaki heritage. Tsunade. Jiraiya cut her off, he's using chakra-enhanced strength regularly. And when the Hokage were back, Hashirama-sama started teaching him. Tsunade stared and then drank all her remaining sake in one go. What are those two? Some freaks of nature. If it's true, then I could go and teach him the byakugan. Jiraiya paled. To give even more chakra and control to a literal, walking juggernaut, Kami-sama protect us then. Tsunade sighed. He has the Mokuton. It has special healing properties. If I teach him properly, he could be just as good as Jiji had once been. A world-renowned medic. But I still want to teach the kid Kenjutsu, he has even more potential than Minato. He grunted with his arms crossed. But if we're speaking about Naruto, we can't ignore the Uchiha either. As long as they're on the same level and so close, he's not a flight risk. Tsunade folded her hands and rested her chin on them. You could teach him some more ninjutsu and taijutsu. Kakashi can refine his ninjutsu knowledge, too. Yamato can still help Naruto with Mokuton and I will teach him medical ninjutsu and maybe add some more to his taijutsu knowledge if he really wants to walk in Senju footsteps. Jiraiya leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. And you teach the Uchiha chakra control. He doesn't have as much chakra as Naruto, nor can I see him as a medic, but he has a lot of chakra for his age. And it's surprisingly potent, for an Uchiha better chakra control would be beneficial for his techniques. And he's also good with Kenjutsu. Perhaps we could rope Yuga or Hayate into teaching him. Tsunade nodded. Possible. Sarutobi-sensei had high expectations of those two and it seems they could live up to set expectations, even exceed them, as long as we give them the means to improve. Perhaps they'll make it onto Junin and Air. From what I've seen, their teamwork is hellish. I never thought I'd say something like this, but they easily beat the Inoshika CHM in teamwork. Yes. But what about the missions? They would need real-life experience, too. They're once in a lifetime pair, I give you that, but their hands are not yet bloody. Not really. Tsunade shrugged. Perhaps you could take them on shorter trips. A field promotion instead of exam. But then again, Junin exams are always within the village and that might be good too. To show others that despite their young age, they're worthy. Jiraiya shrugged. No idea, Kami, my genin team was much easier to deal with. Why can't Naruto be like Minato? Tsunade snorted. He's very much like Minato, Jiraiya. Any more like his father and the kid would be his father reborn. Which he is obviously not, although his skills are growing fast, she huffed. If we manage to get trough with this we'll be creating the level of Madara and Jiji. She murmured. Jiraiya nodded, having the same thoughts. But then, his mind flashed to the conversation he had with the great Toad Sage just a few weeks ago. A blood-chilling conversation about darkness and about a child of Prohisi who either saved or destroyed the world. Perhaps he had been wrong, it had never been Nagato nor Minato. It was Naruto. Darkness covering the world, aired moon like a sinister god watching hanging in the sky, blood flowing in rivers, the great sage had said. Yes, and its terrifying amount of power, but I have a vague bad feeling that if we want those two to survive, they will have to be like Madara and your grandfather in terms of power. He muttered, barely suppressing a cold shiver. The newest Chunin Takubetsu Junin of the village were all sitting at the Akimichis' restaurant, eating. Oh, look, here are our former students. A new voice spoke. Everyone stopped for a second to see their senseis approaching. Kurenai was smiling, Guy had a huge blinding grin on his face, and Asuma's calm expression was radiating pride. Sensei. Several of the former genin called cheerfully. The adults grabbed a few chairs and completed the crowded circle. So, how does it feel to be Chunin? Kurenai asked. It's wonderful. Kiba said enthusiastically. One step closer to being famous woo. Akamaru barked in agreement and the Junin all chuckled at the usual Inuyasha antics. "And you, boys?" asked Asuma, turning to Naruto and Sasuke. "I heard you impressed Godame-sama and the elders." "Takajima on the spot," he hummed, "you're quick to climb the ranks, like Kakashi had been." Sasuke shrugged. "We were just doing what had to be done, plain and simple. But it also helps that we have wonderful senseis." Naruto added with a cheerful grin. That's sweet of you to say, Naruto," came Alizy drawl. Kakashi walked over to them, his stance relaxed. "But really, you two would have been perfectly capable of the things you've done, even without us." Sasuke nodded. "Maybe. But teamwork's essential, no? We stick together." Kakashi nodded. "That we do, Sasuke." "That's so unfair, you two are already Junin," murmured Kiba, scowling at them. Naruto scowled too, as he felt the jealousy rolling off of the feral boy. "We worked for our promotion besides, we're not entirely Junin yet," he pointed out. "Train and work hard, Kiba, and you will have your own accomplishments. Jealousy just tempers your improvement. Instead, sallow your pride and work with your team, together, not just on clan techniques. I'm not saying you leave your family, no, family is more important than anything, just be open to change. Ask others to help you, and if you ask nicely, I'm sure they won't say no. It's just patience and a lot of work." Everyone blinked at those words owlishly, trying to process their meaning. Kakashi hummed. "As enlightening it is to listen to your words of wisdom, Naruto, we have work to do." Both boys' eyes snapped to him, turning sharp and focused in a blink. "It's time?" Sasuke asked, rising from his seat slowly. Kakashi hummed. "I thought I'd go over the debt list before we start, as you've never been to a mission like this. So finish your meals, say goodbye and meet me on Namika's grounds in 20 minutes. Naruto nodded. "We'll be there." Kakashi gave them an eye smile, stole some of Naruto's food, earning himself an outburst from the blonde before disappearing. Naruto scowled at the spot where his sensei had been. "That was me food," he murmured sulkily. The others around him chuckled at his misfortune. Sasuke scoffed, Sharingan narrowing on the offending pieces of clothing. "Stupid Anbu armor. How the hell are we supposed to? Need some help?" came the calm, yet amused voice of Yamato from the door. The Uchiha rolled his eyes at the older Mokuton user. "Why the hell do we need this anyway? We're not Anbu." Yamato walked up to him, showing how to hold the armor, to slip into it. "You're not Anbu, true, but we don't know what may be down there. Tsunade-sama may have classified this in air rank. Both myself and Kakashi would feel better if you were dressed in this. You don't get masks, but we did get permission to borrow these." The Uchiha grunted. Even after so long, it was a bit surreal how protective the two Junin could be, and that hadn't changed one bit even after they told the two who they'd been once. "You two forget what we were once capable of," he murmured as Yamato secured his armor. "Once?" the brown-haired man said. "You can't do it now, not yet. Until I didn't see that famous perfect Susanoo of yours, the one which was the originator to all of them, or Naruto's own avatar, we get to be protective." "Senju? Or Varuna?" Sasuke supplied calmly as he picked up his tenten, securing it on his back as per Anbu protocol. "I'm sorry?" Yamato asked, blinking at him. "Atento's avatar. Senju, if he uses the 9 Bijks chakra. Just so we're clear." Yamato hummed. "Whatever you say, I believe you. The point is, until I see either of those legendary avatars, you're putting up with our fussing and that's it." Sasuke sighed, glancing at the ceiling. "Sama, give me strength," he murmured under his breath, Sharingan skidding about the room as if he wished hard enough the legendary man would appear. He had no such luck. Seriously, ever since they told Kakashi and Yamato, he was cursing more than he had done in his previous life and up till the exam, combined. It was strange, Naruto thought. It was strange how tightly the armor fit, seemingly restricting his movement yet still allowing him to move just as well as before. Tonight was dark, the crescent moon hiding behind the clouds. Still, for a moment, sometimes, he would catch the silvery celestial body and it would bring up memories. Memories of his childhood when they trained with Indra and their father so fondly compared them to the sun and the moon. "Are you ready?" Kakashi asked in a quiet tone, glancing at him and Sasuke. Naruto nodded and then, in a burst of speed, they were gone from the rooftop. They sped off the village, towards the empty, abandoned outskirts. Once they reached just the border of it, Naruto could sense the other Anbu teams approaching, and he pointedly looked in their direction and nodding towards them. It seemed the three teams were suitably impressed with him, if the surprise and shock that sparked among the calmness was anything to go by. "What sort of little monsters do you have for students, senpai?" a bear-masked man asked, looking at Kakashi. Kakashi chuckled, looking at the operative and then at him. "The sort of monsters who can level entire villages without Bijk involvement." Naruto snorted softly. Not yet, but if I Usukai Kantan, I'm sure at least half the village would be covered, which would then give us chance to try and destroy the rest. N plus Ama could always burn down the rest of the place with Shiroi Han. He grinned foxily. Atanto. Sasuke hissed, softly, his sharingan flashing disappointingly. Let's not discuss the destruction of the village, How about we deal with this? I'd gladly sleep tonight if possible. Well, said Uchiha-san. A bird-masked Anbu murmured. You know the plan. Get in, kill anyone whose resistance is danger to your lives, and then we can start collecting the documents. Don't kill those who have been safely restrained. Hi. Came the group's answer as they moved forward. As they descended into the underground facility, Naruto's senses heightened. Channeling a bit of Kurama's chakra helped his eyes adjust to the darkness, too. They were barely inside when he sensed 3 people approaching. The 3 cloaked operatives dropped from the ceiling, radiating killing intent. Leave now, intruders. Naruto's lips curled upwards. Sorry, not gonna happen. He said. He jumped at the men, chakra chains materializing from his back with soft rattle, wrapping around 2 of the Anbu, while Sasuke intercepted the 3rd one. For a while, the operatives tried struggling their golden bonds, but as Naruto anchored the chains to the wall, their movement slowed. Satisfied, he formed even more of the chains to wrap the 2 completely, not even giving them an inch to move. Once he was done, he turned to Sasuke, just in time to see the Uchiha drive his lightning-enhanced blade trough the operative's heart. Once the individual dropped down, Sasuke sighed. Wish I had your chains. But maybe I'll try Ababi version of Tsukiyomi. That should do well to knock them out. He said thoughtfully. Naruto shrugged. Sure. The deeper they went, the more operatives they found, and soon enough, they caught glimpse of Kakashi and Yamato as well, along with the 3 other Anbu scored Tsunade had assigned. It took them the better part of the night, but in the end, the mission was successful. Most root members were alive and bound, some around Sasuke and Naruto's age, but others even younger. A dozen or so of them dead, but compared to how many have been bound, the number was rather small. By the time they collected the bound people, as well as the bodies, it was almost dawn. With the operatives no longer a danger, they could start investigating. Jiraiya called in some members of the T to take the people away. Naruto just barely got his breath back after the fight. The last 2 he'd faced had been skilled and rather determined to kill him, so he had to use Mokuton to surprise them. When Yamato waved them over. Sasuke, Naruto. Hearing the call, the blonde shuffled to his teacher and looked at a stack of papers on the desk. Now, we'll have a lot of things to look trough. I'll show you what to look for, and then, we'll later go over how to write a proper mission report. Nodding in understanding, they set out to work. Naruto froze when he saw the old folder on the very bottom of the pile he'd been going trough. The writing on it, for some reason, turned his blood into Yuzu Elimination Harvest. Cautiously, Naruto pulled out the thick folder and flipped it open to see the documents inside. All of them had decades-old dates. Dates which corresponded with his history knowledge and his mother's brief mentions of the catastrophe. The days of the Second Shinobi War, specifically the destruction of Uzushiogakure. And the files were full of revolting information. How Danzo sabotaged the Konoha troops sent to aid Yuzu. How he boosted Kumokiri Iwa troops with supplies and information to help the village's fall. It also mentioned that several of Danzo's men had been sent to collect the bodies of dead Uzumaki to study them, and how some of the dying had been nursed back to health so that Danzo could keep them here and harvest their abilities. Only for each and every attempt to fail and the subjects to die in pain, either shortly after or months of suffering later. Attempted to awaken and harvest Rinnegan, the legendary eyes of the Sennin, but none seemed successful yet. Used some Uchiha blood, the samples stolen from the hospital, but each child and young adult died without achieving the eyes. Naruto slapped the folder closed and backed away, battling his nausea. Sick fucker. You did well in killing him, and plus Ama. He eliminated the Uzumaki. Now the Uchiha would the Hika have been the next, once their usefulness was over. I don't know. Kurama answered. But in light of this all, I may have been gentle with him and he would have deserved something much worse. Meanwhile, a few shelves away, Sasuke was reading a different mission folder. One, which contained information about the Kagaya clan of Kurigakure. None of the Kagaya seemed to be in possession of the clan's Kekkei Genkai, as the clan members themselves fear it and kill all children capable of utilizing the ability. We had retrieved a few bodies, and the bodies had since been studied, but to no avail. The children we tried injecting with Kagaya blood to awaken the ability had all died of a bone disease. Orochimaru himself is looking for possible solutions. Perhaps someone who has the strong body and life force of Senju and Uzumaki would be able to combat the disease and awaken. Sasuke stopped reading, repulsed. To think a clan would turn on themselves in such a way. Was that which bothered him so much? Or was it Danzo's meddling? Taking a deep breath to control his emotions, he neatly stacked the papers and did his best to work precisely and fast. However, he didn't have his sharingan active, just for once all this disgusting information would burn itself into his mind anyway, no need to make sure it won't ever dull. He knew enough about the man to form his opinion, a sick megalomaniac who had died way too mercifully. Kurama shouldn't have been so gentle. He briefly wondered what Naruto had found, but wait. Perhaps he didn't want to know any more of the shady underground work of this worm. He worked in the dark, underground. Sasuke mused disdainfully. Not even a shinobi, but a worm. A worm of the worst kind. As he categorized the stacks of papers, for the first time in his life, he wished he had some sort of alcohol. Perhaps he could steal a bottle of Tsunade's sake when they went to report. Surely, she wouldn't notice on a bottle missing. Naruto stood in front of his father, his gaze unwavering. Minato's face was one of shock. "You want what?" his father asked. Naruto sighed. "You split the fox in half. No, you were worried I wouldn't be able to withstand all that power. You couldn't know who I had once been, so it's okay to be worried. But now, I need it. I need that chakra back, Omniscent. Once I've worked with the Bijk. They were the enemy siblings. Well, I worked with them before, it would certainly be easier to have the whole of the fox. Now that I'm older and my body has grown used to the power presence, it won't be a problem. Having all of him sealed in me." His father frowned. "I wouldn't want you to be even more of a target, Musuko. At least like this, that masked man can't complete his plan. Not without having all of the fox. And we can't hope to defeat him without the Bijk, either." Sasuke spoke up from next to the tree, where he sat in Kakafusa. "Besides, the man could summon you Trafito Tensei, like the snake face. He would extract a half of the Kikbi you have without question, and we would be at acid back. We're working on saving the world, Omniscent," Naruto said again, this time more firmly. "And we need all of our siblings' help for that, their full power help." His father nodded at last. "Very well, Musuko. It trusts you." Naruto smiled and hugged Minato. His father hugged him back just as firmly. "And reincarnation or not, you're always going to be our little ball of sunshine. Mine and your mother's too." Naruto chuckled. "I wouldn't want that to change." He pulled away, molding his chakra. "Now, if you help with this, the transfer would be easier. We need a twin shiki for this to work." "You mean two seals of the same kind?" his father asked. Naruto shook his head. "No. Two similar seals, but not identical. The base theory of such a seal is that the content of the seal, in this case your half of Kurama, will be considered the difference and, to maintain balance, my half of the seal will absorb chakra from you, trough the link," he answered, crouching down to draw a simple chart into the dirt. "This will create the balance, but at the end of the process, you won't be agent tricky. And it's practical, since it can be applied over an already existing seal and the two seals, which are being connected, can be different, so it is much faster if we break your seal to extract Kurama and then reseal his other half into me. And since we aren't modifying the existing seal, merely use it as a sort of transportation method, like how Hirishin works, taking you from one spot to another. It won't mess up my chakra control, because the fox will be able to regulate how much chakra I can access at a time and gradually make my body get used to the bigger amount without me having to start chakra control from scratch. You follow?" His family members leaned over his shoulder to look at the small drawing he'd made, complete with a few seal symbols and a chibi Kurama for better understanding. This Hashirama murmured, his eyes widening. "His genius." Tobirama said, and Naruto scratched his cheek with a small shrug of his shoulders. "It's not that difficult actually. Ibis this seal on Ninjiki," murmured shyly, "rather, on its theory how it was meant to connect, trough chakra." Naruto. Naruto jolted out of his memories at hearing his name. It was Sasuke. And plus Ama. Sasuke made a gesture. "Kakashi agreed to a fight between us and Guy's team. Well, promised to ask, that is, as we have the right to turn it down. He's really just our captain on missions now." Naruto hummed. Yeah. What about it? We could beat some sense into Niji. I wouldn't stand for one of our kin, no matter how distant that connection is, acting like that." The blonde hummed as he stood up. "Well said. Being the lonely genius, perhaps you can even reach out to him." Sasuke snorted. "Yara, the one who's proficient in talk no jutsu, nam," he murmured. Naruto snorted and gave him a look. Sasuke's eyes morphed into the Sharingan as he took his fighting stance, Niji standing opposite him. Lee had wanted to fight him, but Sasuke made his intentions of matching Sharingan against byakugan very clear. But Lee would have fun with Naruto too, Sasuke was sure of that. His brother's speed and heavy hits were close to the style of Taijutsu Lee and Guy were fond of. So, switching pairs also ensured he won't have broken bones. Unlike Naruto, he couldn't heal himself, nor did he have one of their Bijk siblings sealed in his gut. "Remember to fight fairly," Kakashi called sternly. Sasuke nodded towards his teacher and turned his gaze back to Niji. The older's own jutsu was also active. Hajime. Sasuke took a deep breath and let Neji make the starting strike. Just remember how Mitra fought. He told himself, calmly analyzing the situation as he deflected a few of the Haika's strikes. There are 365 Tenketsu, and he can see their precise location. The moment I break his hit sequence, I have the upper hand, he thought. Mitra's pale eyes narrowed on him, her byakugan already ablaze, as she took her stance. Her black hair was secured in a tight braid, brushing her mid-back. Hers was the exact stance his uncle used. But then again, it would make sense, as she had her father's eyes. The byakugan's abilities of near 360-degree X-ray vision were something to be wary of. Her face was emotionless, her pale eyes like empty pearls. Shinju and Asura had called him emotionally stunted. No. He was just fine emotionally, thank you. He just didn't carry said emotions on his sleeve, like his little brother. Mitra on the other hand was emotionally problematic. How their uncle hadn't noticed it, he would never understand. "Ready, Indra?" she asked, tone flat. He smirked at her. "Come, catch me, cousin." She scoffed and leapt forwards, strikes fast and precise, but it was useless. She was talented, but he wasn't the prodigy of ninja for nothing. Besides, he already knew how his uncle fought. He deflected several of her strikes, and even the few that were too fast for his hands to catch, hit him prepared. It was just a question of timing and chakra control. Mitra wasn't the only one with near-perfect control in the family. And unlike her, he wasn't limited to close range. He caught her wrist, making her eyes widen, and kicked her in the abdomen, hard. Then, here Antroff a set of seals that had long since become his favorite. He caught Neji's open palm strike in the last minute, just inches away from its target, shocking the Haika. How he whispered. Sasuke grinned. "You're good. But I developed my fighting style around a more skilled byakugan user." He answered matter-of-factly in a low tone, so the rest of Team 3 would not hear. He kicked the Chiknin in the abdomen, and Neji went flying back a few feet. Sasuke stopped where he was, easing his stance. Neji stood slowly, glaring heatedly, and had Sasuke been anyone else, he would have cowered. "What did you just?" he gasped out. "Did you call that Shami if Aharis we have a better fighter than I am?" he asked, tone heated and dangerous. Sasuke snorted mentally. "No. I was talking about Mitra." He thought seriously, barely resisting the urge to roll his eyes. "Shame of Aharis." He arched an eyebrow. "She has a good heart, which few can say about themselves in this misguided world. Kindness is not weakness, I've learned that myself," he said, darting closer. "She's a failure," Neji hissed as he moved again. Sasuke deflected his strikes again, holding back a wince now and then as a few hit. He was sure he was going to have bruises after this, as well as some internal bleeding, but then again, he could be Naruto's practice for his medical training. "She's your family," Sasuke pressed as he increased his speed ever so slightly to make it harder for Neji to reach him. The more they dragged this out, the likelier it was he could drive it off the Haika's tough skull, that no matter what were the circumstances, family was family, for few crimes were truly unforgivable. "And what do you know of that, Uchiha?" Neji spat back. "Your clan are gone. The one you call your family loves you more than my kin ever cared for me." No. That was not true. Mitra had always been prideful, maybe even more than him, but she loved her own. She had loved her sister dearly and her children even more. He could no longer recall the names of his nieces and nephews, but he still remembered how Asura told him that the four of them could be family again, that he would have a loving wife and children and curious nieces and nephews all around him. "I doubt your kin would discard you so carelessly," he said. "Trust me, I know how much a clan care for their own." He knew how much Mitra had loved her husband and children. She'd never been the prankster kind like Asura, but there was a subdued kindness to her. She was a lot like her father. Her sister Sarvastra had been more like their mother and a bit like Asura in terms of leering and pranks in nature. "You know nothing. Your clan never treated you like a saged animal. I'm a servant to my own uncle." Sasuke growled, his sharingan morphing into its higher state, making Neji's eyes widen. He kicked the older hard with a chakra-infused blow, and as the older sprawled on the ground, he landed next to him, kneeling on Neji's chest, careful to keep his own weight. "I know everything," he countered as his sharingan took hold, transferring just enough knowledge for Neji to grasp he wasn't what he looked like and that he had the means and the power to help. Neji's breath hitched as the genjutsu ended and he found himself staring up into dark brown pitch black eyes. "Indra." Sasuke. The Sasuke wasn't all he seemed. He was as much Sasuke as much Indra. Son of the Sennin, progenitor of the Uchiha. Brother to Asura, who was progenitor of Senju and Uzumaki. Brother of the 9 Bijk. Nephew of Otatsuki Hamura, cousin to Sarvastra and Mitra, progenitors of Kagaya and Haika respectively. "You can't be," he whispered in shock. I'm Indra," he said firmly, tone low. "And I know mine own cousins." Mitra would never abide by the suffering of her own. As Niji stopped struggling, he slowly loosened his hold. I don't know your story, but you can share. I have a fair share of my own demons. Asura Naruto and I we can help. If y'all let us. You can't. Niji whispered. A caged bird is only free in death. Sasuke shook his head. A caged bird adapts and grows strong from capture. Learns to open the locks of its cage with a beak. But even if you cannot do it, let us do it. The time when we shared a blood, yours and mine, is long gone. But I have not forgotten. We're family. Niji bit his lips. He wanted to believe, he so desperately wanted to believe that he could be free again, but the clan would never let it. Even if ArthuriaPenDragon was indeed who he claimed to be, even then, the clan would deny them the freedom. They would never let you. Sasuke stood slowly, dragging him up as well. Niji ignored the dust that was now covering him, and he was too shocked to be upset about losing. Heck, considering who Sasuke was, he was probably lucky to be alive. Between myself and Otanto, they won't have Achis. We can be rather persuasive. Sasuke said, as his sharingan spun lazily, nodding towards Naruto. But first, you have a cousin to apologize to. Time to make it up to her and present on it front. Niji thought for a moment before nodding. Best not piss off the sharingan user. He liked his head on his shoulders, thank you very much. As they left Kakashi and Guy behind, excusing themselves with a surprisingly plausible lie, who knew Naruto was so good at deception? Niji let his thoughts wander. He recalled the first days of meeting the odd pair, Uchiha and Senju, the unlikeliest duo, considering the clan's histories. Naruto's and Sasuke's presence had, from the first day of their meeting, felt overwhelming. It wasn't the controlled, subdued power of an experienced shinobi, that much Niji understood. Their power felt nothing like Guy's, his uncle's or Kakashi-san's. No, it had always felt something more, something he felt clearly, despite not being a sensor type. It was a feeling which offered comfort and warned him of danger at the same time. He'd never understood how ones younger than him could have such overwhelming presence. He admitted he'd tried riling up Naruto, hoping he would lose focus, but it hadn't worked. Back then, he didn't understand why, now he knew. He stopped on the edge of the training ground where teammates were having their training. Naruto and Sasuke had come with him, for which he was grateful. If not for the calming presence of the blonde Senju Uzumaki, Otatsuki, he would have long abandoned the idea. Oh. Naruto said with an encouraging smile. Just say sorry. Explain why things had been hard for you. She's your family. She'll understand. She's barely spoken to me since. Niji frowned, looking away. You carry a different name now, as do we. Sasuke said, pointing at Naruto and then himself. But there is something that still remains, from the days of Ninja. The family. Otatsuki still value family above all. That is as much our strength as it is our weakness, no matter which of the 5 offshoot clans you mention. Don't let it be your weakness. Don't follow my path, I and mine paid a price for it. Make family your strength. Niji nodded at the two gratefully and stalked towards the training teammate. They were having a jutsu spar, and as he got closer, Niji noticed the slight mistakes in his cousin's stance. Mistakes that messed up her balance and gave her Inuyasha teammate Akins to knock her off balance, sending her flying. Niji's eyes widened as he noticed the angle she would crash. He pushed chakra into his feet to enhance his speed and jumped, just barely catching Hinata and landing with a roll. He grunted a bit at the dull pain, but it was nothing compared to what Hinata would have felt had he let her fall. He stopped the roll and slowly sat up. Hinata's eyes were wide with shock. She looked a bit winded. And Niji N+S-an. Niji took a deep breath, stealing a glance at the brothers lingering on the other edge of the clearing. Both nodded to him and he looked back at his cousin. Could we speak for a moment, Hinata-sama? The brothers let the two Hyuga have their moment. It was Niji who needed to come to terms with his life, and when that happened, when the cousins stood united, maybe then things would be better. After about a good hour, Niji and Hinata both approached, the shy heiress having a smile on her face. Arigato, na Naruto-kun, Sasuke-kun, for bringing Niji N+ back. I mean that. We know what you mean, Hinata. Naruto said in a calm manner, waving her off. Now that you two made up, would you agree to a match? The two of you, against us. Hinata's eyes went wide. What? But IIC could never hope to beat you, ma, maybe, and Niji. Niji snorted a bit, shaking his head. Not in this lifetime. You're forgetting Naruto-sen beat me during the exams, and Sasuke-sen just turned my own moves against me before we came here. Sasuke hummed. I may have done so, but you left me with a few painful bruises, aching chakra coils, and maybe a bit of internal bleeding. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Hewitt. Sit down. Sasuke shook his head. It's nothing life-threatening, Otanto, otherwise. Sit down, N+sama, he said firmly, his eyes narrowing. And stay still. Sasuke sighed and did as the blonde ordered, drawing soft chuckles from the two Hyuga. As Naruto's hands began to glow green, Sasuke gestured for the cousins to sit. When both were seated, his eyes shifted between them. How about we train together? You two are pretty good. What? Neji asked, eyes wide. But will you? Because that's what friends do. Sasuke said, placing extra emphasis on the friend's word. Neji's eyes widened even more as he caught the hidden message. Hinata, meanwhile, was trying not to faint at the thought of the infamous duo wanting to be around her. She'd always admired their strength, Naruto the most. Unlike the rest of their classmates, she knew that the village hadn't always been nice to him, but despite everything, he had kept smiling and remained positive. However, she'd noticed things improving after he was revealed as someone related to 3 now 4 of the village's Hokage. So? Naruto asked, quirking an eyebrow. What do you say? The cousins shared a look, thinking for a moment. Alright. They said at the same time. Naruto grinned, like the sun. Wonderful. We can find time that doesn't interfere with your training or family life. We can adjust our schedules according to necessity. Too tired but please Takubetsu Jinin sped towards the Hokage tower, befitting their rank. After Naruto had healed Sasuke and also patched up the one big wound on Neji caused by Sasuke's kick, the 4 had gone out to eat. Their bonding time was cut short when Namiashi Raito, a man whom Naruto knew had been one of his father's guards, told them that Tsunade had summoned them for something. However, Raito hadn't specified why, so they were a bit worried, hence their breakneck speed. Luckily, Tsunade left the window open, unlike the Sandaime that one time, so they could jump into the office without having to ruin anything. They turned to Tsunade with a dip of their heads. Hokage-sama. Naruto, Sasuke. She greeted, a pleased expression on her face. I hope my summon hadn't interrupted anything important. The boys shared a look. The village comes first. Sasuke said in a measured tone, unwilling to admit that he may have enjoyed his time with the Hyugas. Tsunade hummed. I'm glad you think so, however, I really hope I didn't disturb anything, as this summon has less to do with the village and more with your future. Our future? Naruto echoed, a bit confused. They had a particular picture of their future, which involved getting strong enough to stop a pair of mad uchihas, and also their grandmother, if push came to shove, and not dying in the process. We hope to train you. Jiraiya suddenly spoke, revealing himself. Naruto twitched, a bit annoyed that in his hurry, he had forgotten to beware, as it was demanded of every shinobi. There seemed to be some trouble brewing in the form of a group who want the bijk. And we want you to be able to protect yourselves and each other, considering you're almost never separate. The two shared a look. Is that mad freak already moving? It's sooner than you said he might. Kurama growled into their minds. If he is, Sasuke said, eyes narrowing a bit, that would mean that we will have to kick up our training by a notch. Or by several notches. Screw it all. Naruto cursed before looking back at the two Sannin. And what does this mean for us? Tsunade sighed. We'll help you two train. In fact, we were thinking about a sort of shared apprenticeship. Well, something like it. Jiraiya would help you with Taijutsu, Genjutsu, and perhaps, if either of you are interested, Senjutsu. Naruto, I heard that you would pursue medicine, so I will teach that to you, along with the Senju Taijutsu as well, as my personal style. Sasuke, well, you may never be a medic, I will help with your chakra control as well. Kakashi will help with your nin and Genjutsu skills, and Naruto, if you still need assistance, Yamato will help with Mokuton. Between all of this, we would go to the field, the three of us, to help you with experience, tracking and information gathering. If you perform well, we might consider a field promotion in the future instead of you taking the Chunin exam. Jiraiya injected. They shared a look. It sounded fine and effective. Plus, they would never truly be separate, save for perhaps a few days, which was also ominous. Sticking together was essential. They couldn't let Zetsu create a wedge between them. Never again. So? Jiraiya asked, crossing his arms. Do you two accept? The boys smirked, their voices coming in perfect sync. When do we start? They were sure that their days would be busy from now on, but there was no victory without sweat and blood. And if all this work would eventually stop the Jubai's reformation, well, all the better. That was why they'd been training so hard all this time. The Sannin offering to help was just an added bonus. Maybe, just maybe, humanity won't be turned into mindless slaves under their crazy goddess of a grandmother. And that marks the end of the fourth part of the story. If you guys made it this far and want more contents like this, comment down below to let me know. Thanks for sticking out till the end. I would gladly appreciate every likes, comments and subscribes I could get on this series. It only takes a minute, and best of all, you can show your support for absolutely no cost. See you in the next one.